Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. What's going on, everybody? We got fights. UFC Vegas 67. I am amped up. I'm so ready. This break has been so long. The football has been fantastic. Got to watch the Green Bay Packers get knocked out of the playoffs. Thank you, Lions. You're my favorite. There's been some fun stuff going on. Some not so fun stuff going on. But at the end of the day, I'm just freaking happy that we got fights back. We're back on track. We're back on schedule. The boys are back in town. What is up, everybody in the chat? We've got Lou Betcha, first man up. Love to see it. We got Air Dog, Levi Whitebull, Justin Valejas, Aiden Simone, YouTube user. Excited. Thank you. New to be here. Love it. Gotta pump up the name there a little bit, though. Frank in the house. What's up, buddy? Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Y'all know the drill. We got to smash that like button. Let the internet know we're back. We've been quiet on Monday nights the last couple weeks. They're not expecting us. We got to take them by storm. Smash the like button for me, guys. It is 2023. Clean slate. Clean break from 2022. We got a fresh mindset. We're coming at this bad boy hard. We're going to right the wrongs of last year. And to do all that, I got to get you all started off on the right foot. So I got one of my favorite guests, one of your favorite guests, one of the sharpest sons of bitches in the entire game, none other than Liam Picks Fights, hanging out with us for the first event of 2023. Liam, buddy, how you doing?
What's going on, Clint? It's good to be back, brother. Those Green Bay Packers cost me a little bit financially, so I got to say, it's good to have some fights back on the docket. This is what we love to do the most, and, that lull period comes around every January. We get sidetracked. We start to pursue other interests, but it's always a good thing when we got fights on a Saturday night. We have them once again, so we got a lot to dive into, my man. I'm excited to do it.
That's what's up. And Liam, I hate to hear that you lost money on the Packers, buddy, but as a Vikings fan, nothing was sweeter than watching Aaron Rodgers limp off the field. You should have had the Dillon touchdown, though. Let's be real. I mean, he had two straight up shots at it, first drive of the game. You should have cashed that one.
Couple bad beats, couple bad bets. You got to roll with the punches, but I'm excited, man. MMA is the bread and butter, so we got a lot to dig into, man.
That's right. We got a good card to get into. We got a fun card to talk about, and YouTube user is Julie. Julie, thank you so much for showing up on the show today. I know exactly who you are now. I appreciate you joining the live stream. All right, everybody, here we go. Let's go ahead and get on into this thing. We got UFC Vegas 67 coming up. As always, this is Pub Sports Radio. Subscribe here for the best all-around content all the time for sports betting. If you haven't already, lines are presented and powered by Superbook Sports. And we have got a banger, Liam, absolute banger to kick off the night. We've got none other than Priscila Cachoeira taking on Sijara Eubanks. And look at the shiny new graphics. Your boy worked hard on these bad boys. I like these ones a whole lot better than the last bit. They feel cleaner to me. Let me know what you think, obviously, in the chat and in the comment section down below. But I'm kind of digging it myself. So as always, lines are subject to change. Right now, Sijara Eubanks, the minus 200 favorite. Priscila Cachoeira is your plus 170 underdog, a 125-pound bout. And you guys know me. These heat-seeking, missile-throwing, low-level underdogs, they're my kryptonite. Like, I absolutely love Priscila Cachoeira. And, man, you go back and you watch a couple of her recent fights. the grappling looks like it's improving, especially against Jillian Robertson. Her initial level takedown defense looked a lot better, did a good job circling off the cage, digging the underhooks, keeping her space. But damn, man, she has nothing as soon as she gets down to the mat. Like, it's improving. It's still not good enough. Jillian sliced through her like butter as soon as they finally hit the floor. The difference between someone like Jillian Robertson and Sijara Eubanks, though, is massive. Sarge is 7-7. She's a literal 500 fighter in the UFC. She's 37 years old. And I'm still not certain if this fight is taking place at 135 or 125. The initial thing I saw said 135. Now it's looking like it's 125. So check the scales, because Sijara Eubanks has a hard time making 125 pounds. At 135, she's kind of beefy. She's kind of strong, maybe a little bit short. But at 125, I have questions about the gas tank. And that's the Cachoeira special, right? Is when someone slows down, starts the gas, she beats the brakes off them in the second and the third rounds if she can survive early. So it's going to be a big question of who can implement their game plan here to me. You guys know me. I don't trust Sijara Eubanks. I never have. Her only knockout loss, though, was the body shot against Melissa Gatto in her last fight. That was deep in the third round. And as much as I love Priscila, she's not that slick of a striker. She can't duplicate that effort. You know what I mean? So I kind of lean to Sijara Eubanks here with the favorite, but you won't catch me dead laying -200 on Sarge. Liam, talk to me, buddy. First fight of the year. How do you feel about this one? What side you ending up on?
I think that this is one of the easiest fights from a betting perspective on the card in terms of what you should be doing here. You just can't trust a 500 fighter like Sijara Eubanks, who's older, a little bit longer in the tooth, with a -200 price tag. How do I know? She's been on average as a favorite in the UFC, a -203 price tag. She's won 57% of the time. You're not making money betting that. So it's just, when I look at her historically, hasn't paid off that juice price. On the other hand, Priscila Cachoeira has never been a favorite in a UFC fight, right? So if you've just been betting her continuously, you've made a lot of money, as a matter of fact. 43% return on investment straight up if you just bet Priscila Cachoeira on the money line every fight. So from a money line perspective, this is a clear dog or pass situation. Now, if you're looking to play the Sijara side, how would you play her? I mean, you obviously look towards an inside the distance. You look towards a submission prop. I would think against somebody like Priscila, who we just noted has some deficiencies in her grappling. She's going against somebody who's very credentialed on the mats. That skill doesn't really go away as you get older. But maybe some of that physical edge that you have over most women goes away when you're fighting somebody who's got a couple inches of height on you, who's going to be stronger, a little bit younger, who's been physically intimidating for some opponents in the past. So I think that Cachoeira could get completely audited on the ground here. But I think maybe looking at the fight, not to go the distance, a little bit rare for a women's fight. But you got two women that can be finished, two women that can dole out a finish, two women that can hurt you. Sijara Eubanks does damage on the ground. She'll bust up your face and break you. But I also think that if she doesn't get the fight to the ground, Melissa Gatto finished her with a body kick, things that you don't see very often in women's MMA. I feel like we could definitely see, Priscila Cachoeira with some body work, with some punches upstairs, put Sijara away. So I think either of these women have a chance to finish. It's a clear dogger pass.
I like it, Liam. I absolutely like it. And you saying dogger pass, me saying I'm not laying the chalk. Close enough. My guy Aiden Simone probably has the best read in the house here. Live bet on Cachoeira after she takes that round one beating. I don't hate it. Bro, if you see Sijara with her hands on her knees, sitting over on the stool, coaches trying to pump her up between rounds 1 and 2, that's the move. Jump on Cachoeira headed into round 2. That is absolutely the move. Got to shout out my guy Boston Nick MMA, guys. Just so you know, we've opened up memberships here at Pub Sports Radio. It's only $4.99 a month. Definitely helps out Pub Sports Radio. So if you guys would consider it, definitely helps us keeping the free content flowing to you guys 24/7. Definitely appreciate it. And we are going to have some cool prizes and perks for the people who have subscribed here to Pub Sports Radio in the near future. All right, there's your first fight of 2023, everybody. The next fight on the docket. Let me pull up my page here and make sure I'm going in the right order, because they always goof these things around on us. Next up, we got Charles Johnson taking on Jimmy Flick. I love this fight. Because you guys know, obviously, pre-Kraus shenanigans, Jeff Molina was my guy. Like, I was so pumped up for his future in the UFC, and they had Jimmy Flick taking on Jeff Molina, and I love them both. I hate it when the UFC pairs up two guys I'm a fan of because I want to root for them both to get across the finish line, not one or the other. They saved me. Now I've got a clear, heart-pounding opportunity here for my guy Jimmy Flick. So he wins off the Contender Series. One of the weirdest stories we've seen in MMA for a while, Liam. Gets off the Contender Series, snaps off a flying triangle choke, retires, and 2 years later says, all right, I'm ready to go. So now he's back. Sounds like he had some outside of the cage things that were hampering him. Sounds like everything is going the right direction for him. You know, we can trust fighters about as far as we can throw them. Most of us don't practice judo, so that's not very far. I'm not sure what to believe with Jimmy Flick coming back at this point. All I know is I love the guy, and he's got that high-risk, high-end submission offense, something that can bail him out of bad opportunities. And I really hope he's not watching the show, Liam, because he's one of these guys who is a minus athlete, in my opinion. He's got that gritty, dirty striking. He's slow. He's awkward. And he's got to get his mitts on you. If he can't get the grappling going, he just doesn't have an answer. And someone like Charles Johnson, you guys have heard me pump him up the last couple of times he's fought. I feel like he's drastically underrated by the market for the most part. I got extremely lucky with that split decision against Algas Zumagulov. But you look at the Muhammad Mokaev fight, and even though he got tangled up in that fight and backpacked basically for 15 minutes, his sub-D is on point. You know, you saw in the Algas Zumagulov fight, the counter-striking is on point. That teep up the middle, the step-in knees. He's tall, he's long. He hits pretty damn hard for this weight class. The volume is good. He breaks people the later the fight goes. This one kind of feels kill or be killed to me because I don't think Jimmy Flick can stand with Charles Johnson. And I trust Charles Johnson's defense for the most part on the ground. I'm also not in the business of betting a guy coming off of a 2-year layoff. I want to say Jimmy Flick by sub, Liam. I really do. But I think Charles Johnson will be able to stay safe. And I think he probably knocks Jimmy out in the second round after Jimmy Flick kind of can't close that distance on him. Obviously, Jimmy's always going to be open for that round one Hail Mary, you know, flying triangle, tie him up, twist his knee backwards or something like that. But I kind of don't see it happening. I'm going to side with the favorite here in this spot. What about yourself?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I thought that I was going to be on the Jimmy Flick side. You know me. I like a guy who's going to go for some flying triangles and some crazy stuff. But just looking back at my own betting history, I did drop 1 unit on Cody Durden to win by knockout. And Cody Durden isn't a guy that I bet a lot of times in the UFC, but I bet him plus 325 to win by knockout against Jimmy Flick because of some of the things that you mentioned, you know. And Cody was doing well in that fight, but then he did a classic Cody mistake. I feel like he's grown out of a lot of those things, working with, I believe, MMA Masters. And if I'm mistaken there, I apologize, but I think that he's been working with them. And
I think you're right.
No, I think it's
moved out there.
Yeah, or if not, it's American Top Team. He's somewhere down in South Florida, I think. But either way, he's invested in his career. He's looked a lot better in the aftermath of that fight. But, you know, how can I back Jimmy here coming off of a 2-year layoff where I don't know exactly how close he's been to the martial arts world in that time off? Charles Johnson, say what you will about the guy, he's never been submitted before. He's fought some pretty tough guys. So, you know, that speaks pretty well to his grappling acumen. Do I think this is probably the toughest test of his grappling? Yes. Do I think that, you know, Jimmy has the necessary physicality to bring it to the wrestling realm of the fight at all times? I'm not sure. You know, it's really going to come down to that first round, I feel like, where Jimmy's going to be extremely live when they're both dry. He's a really good grappler. He's really talented. And he's really tricky. You know, he'll pop out on your back from weird positions. It's just hard to get a hold of. And it's not like Charles Johnson is averse to grappling. He'll grab a hold of people in a lot of his fights, and I think that could put him in trouble here. You know, you see some overhook ties and weird movements that Jimmy uses to set up his attacks. But if Charles is able to stay disciplined, keep his elbows tight, and be smart for the first couple rounds, I think he probably is going to find the knockout. Jimmy's going to be probably a little bit nervous getting back in there. It's been a little while. They always say when you hear fighters talk in interviews, you know, when I stay in there consistently, it's not as nerve-wracking. You know, it just feels like I'm at work. Whereas when I get back in there, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? How did I end up back in here? And that's the one thing that I want to see Jimmy come back and perform before I trust him with my money. Am I going to be laying minus 500 on, Charles Johnson? Am I going to lay minus 300? No, I'm not going to do that. I think that, you know, I was one of the guys that was on that other side with Zalgas. to a pretty big tune. I
sorry.
thought Zalgas was going to do more. Oh, don't worry, brother. No, it's life. And honestly, I've gotten paid out on ones that I shouldn't have, that I probably greased the wheels a little bit. So you get some and you give some. I gave a lot last year. I'm going to be honest. I gave a lot of ones that were really important to me and I was sad about. But I did very well, so I can't complain. But in terms of this fight, Charles Johnson to win by knockout is plus 100. I can't even get invested there. I mean, we're still talking about flyweights. We're still talking about a fight that could degenerate into both guys just clinching each other into the fence for the remainder of 7.5 minutes if they both start to slow down a little bit. So I don't love this spot, for betting, frankly. I'm just going to let this fight go in all likelihood. I haven't looked too deeply into the totals markets here if there's any trends to back there. But yeah, this is for me just a fight that I'm probably going to pass on.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you brought up the totals because I was looking at betting the under 2.5 and it opened up at minus 120. And I thought, whoo, that's some good news right there. Finished up my tape study, came back and it's minus 175. So apparently I should have smashed the under 2.5 the second it dropped. I wasn't quite ready to pull the trigger just yet. And now I feel like I kind of have to steer clear of it because I could see this fight ending early. I really could. But one thing about Charles Johnson, especially when you're dealing with a dangerous submission guy like Jimmy Flick, like how many times have we seen minutes tick by with a jiu-jitsu guy on his back with his hands behind his head, waiting for you to engage? We could see a lot of that kind of thing in this fight, in my opinion, and it might squeeze its way over. That's not a price tag I'm interested in at this point, so it's a complete pass for me as well. I'm going to pick Charles Johnson. I'm going to be rooting my ass off for Jimmy Flick, and if I find a crazy number on a submission prop for Jimmy Flick, then maybe we sprinkle a little bit just because that's his path to victory. But we'll see what that ends up looking like a little bit later on in the week. All right, everybody, we have got 69 people watching live right now. Had to shout out the good number there. Everybody smash the like button for me. We are back in full swing with some gorgeous MMA action, breaking down UFC Vegas 67 with my guy Liam Picks Fights. Make sure you give him a follow. He is doing some absolutely incredible work over with the Lab VIP, so make sure you check that out. We're going to make sure to have links and stuff like that to his stuff in the description below. I'll set that up all after the stream, obviously, but make sure you follow him on Twitter. You'll be able to find all of his good info there. And let's see here. We have got a big question from my guy ZGoler00 asking if there's any NHL action tonight. You know what? There isn't. The one thing I did do was I did a funky little parlay. I went over 5.5 in the Flyers and Sabres game, and I parlayed that with the over 5.5 in the Oilers and Kings game. That way, if you get to 6 on either of them, that should cash plus 120. That's all I got for tonight. I see goals in both those two games, but that is about it. So there's your degenerate NHL action. Travis Konechny, anytime goal plus 160. There you go. Flyers. Let's go. We are going to get into your next fight here, ladies and gentlemen, because I know only about 5% of you give a shit about the NHL action. So let's dig on into it. We have got a returning newcomer here in this spot. Daniel Argueta makes his second performance here in the UFC's Octagon, taking on newcomer Isaac Dulgarian. And this is a hell of a fight, Liam. I can't wait to see how this one pans out. You guys may remember Daniel Argueta is the one who came in on short notice against none other than Jackson, a guy we're going to talk a little bit later on in the evening. And for some reason, my brain kept saying Montel Jackson. No, Damon Jackson. Had to remind myself the correct first name there so I didn't spit the wrong one out, because I always get reamed for that in the comments section after I mix up my names. There's too many Jacksons, damn it. No, so Daniel Argueta really impressed me. I mean, he's short, he's stocky, he's well muscled. This guy knows how to strike. He knows how to wrestle. His submission defense was on point that whole fight against Damon Jackson. Damon had his back for basically half the fight, 70% of the fight. He was able to stay safe, able to roll out of bad positions. Like, he really looks like he's improved. I mean, he was an Ultimate Fighter throwaway, lost to Ricky Tercios, became the LFA champion. Really looks like he's kind of put it together ever since then. Kid's a southpaw, good ground game, strong ground and pound. That's where he wants this fight to be. Now, his opponent, on the other hand, 5-0, undefeated, UFC debut. He's got a 100% finish rate, amateur and pros. Now, that's not the craziest thing in the world we've ever heard of. We see that pretty often, but his is pretty stellar if you look at it. Now, he's a Glory MMA fighter since the Kraus fallout, has moved over to Factory X Muay Thai for this one. Honestly, stocky and strong looking. You look at this guy's back on the regional scene, and he's just wide in the right spots against some of these fighters. And I believe he wrestled at Notre Dame prior to going pro for MMA. So he's got a solid wrestling background here in this spot. Extremely slick grappler, looks very comfortable on the mat from what I was able to find. Uses that ground and pound to really like loosen his opponents up and find those submission opportunities. And dude, he's just relentless on top, Liam. Like this kid, you do not want this kid Isaac on top of you. And I feel like this is a sneaky spot where we got a guy that's being a little disrespected due to recency bias. We saw Daniel Argueta go in there and have a good performance. They opened up Dulgarian as a plus 220 underdog in this spot, and he got steamed immediately. And I feel like that's right. I feel like that was the right move to get in on him early at that plus number. He's all the way down to plus 155 now, and that seems a little bit more fair to me. I think they disrespected him a little bit on that opener, but I could see a very live fight here. It's going to come down to the wrestling, and I'm not sure that Argueta is going to beat Dulgarian in the wrestling department, Liam. You are a much better judge of wrestling skill set than I am. I'm going to kick this one over to you and let me know. Is my dogger pass tingling on the right page here? What do you think about this fight?
You know, I'm having a little bit of a hard time getting a great read on this fight. Neither one of them has fought the highest level of competition. Obviously, Argueta's fought a little bit of a higher level of competition, but you look at Dulgarian and he does look like the goods. You know, he just looks like he has a lot of the skills that you want to see. He looks like he's got the right body type, does look like a plus athlete. And, you know, one of the things about Damon Jackson, obviously looked very violent in his last fight, absolutely blasting Pat Sabatini. Could tell you, I never saw that coming at all. So that one took me by complete surprise. No, sometimes you just don't see these things coming. Yeah, exactly. From Damon Jackson. But it just,
bro, I was like, sport. I went back because I remembered. I was like, I know Damon Jackson wins this by round 1, but I couldn't remember how it happened. I totally forgot the front kick. That's the kind of thing where you're like, when does Damon Jackson throw front kicks on takedowns? Like, of course Pat Sabatini didn't see that coming. Nobody saw that coming. What the hell?
Absolutely, man. And what I think about is in this kind of spot, you know, Dulgarian, he's the plus money guy. He's coming in with a very solid wrestling background. He's certainly going to be able to compete in those positions. Like somebody mentioned in the chat, we don't really have the same kind of questions answered about his cardio. We don't really know how well he's going to perform down the stretch, especially when he's meeting resistance from a good fighter. That's going to be an interesting tell. I would say that the number one thing that wrestlers struggle with translating to MMA is the fact that it's twice as long. You know, it's like we learn how to compete for 7 minutes very hard, and we could do that, absolutely. But then there's these other 7 minutes where, you know, trying to wrestle somebody for 15 minutes is extremely difficult. Can he balance out, you know, either going for takedowns later in the round or finding that finish? And the one thing about Damon Jackson is outside that knockout, outside that really violent finish, a lot of times he's looking for chokes. He's looking for positions. He's looking to submit you. He's a leech, you know. When you look at that kind of performance from Dulgarian, when he gets to those same positions, he's not trying to, you know, go for an arm bar. He's not trying to grab a hold of your neck. He's trying to punch you in the head as hard as he can. And he's trying to get wrist control and do it again, and then hip down and punch you harder and force you to go to bad positions and beat you up. And that's a good fighting mechanism. You know, like what do we see all the Dagestani guys do? They don't just go down and try and, you know, submit you. Most of the time they take you down and they beat you up and they make you submit yourself. They make you quit. They make you make bad decisions and put your hands in stupid places trying not to get punched in the face anymore. And I think that's the ultimate way to win here. So I think that for Dulgarian, he's going to try and get on top early. He's going to try and dominate from those top positions and find ways to attack with strikes and finish. I think he's going to be dangerous to do that. If the fight gets extended, then you're playing into variance. You know, when you're playing an underdog like this, you have to know going in, I might lose this one. So I always tell people when I structure my bets, I always think when I'm betting on an underdog, how much am I willing to lose to find out if I'm right about this theory? Because that's really what it is. In this case, you have to come up with a theory of the case. I think Dulgarian could get on top of him and finish. But if it gets extended, do I want to have myself out there with a big risk? That's a question you have to ask yourself. So For me, I haven't placed any money on this fight. I would probably look towards the dog or pass in this spot based on what we know about the two guys. But they're both talented fighters. So interested to see how the wrestling pans out here.
Agreed. I can't wait to look into this one. I can't wait to watch this fight. Absolutely, because it's going to be fun, man. And thank you, Billy, for jumping in and pointing out this is a Nelk Boys sponsored fighter. And frankly, Liam, that puts the narrative cap on for me because we've seen what happens when these big sponsored fighters get their shot in the UFC. I mean, look what happened to poor Jared Gordon. Like, when you've got big money with big sponsors on these guys, they get soft matchmaking and they get good judging. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we've got just a little extra incentive for this guy who's sponsored by Nelk to get an extra little bit of rub. Maybe a match they feel like he's fully capable of winning, and maybe if it gets hairy, they bail him out. This is one of those spots where I definitely would be suspicious, and lean dog or pass to begin with. That makes me a little bit more interested in taking that shot.
Can't blame you.
All right. Now, we did have a question earlier on in the night, Liam. I don't know if you are interested, but somebody did ask where we're sitting on the championship game. Do you have any college football action for the people about to kick off here in 3 minutes?
Oh, goodness. No, I have not bet anything. My man Kamish Film Room, he is on like a 7-0 run in his last 7 college football bets. I think he had something for the game tonight. Truthfully, I don't know what that is. But he's the man to ask. Yeah, at Kamish Film Room on Twitter. Get at him and see what he's got for you folks. But he's the man with the plan tonight.
There you go.
I've been focused on these fights.
I hear you. I'm doing the same thing. Shout out my guy Razor Sharp Picks. He's gonna kill me because if you didn't, retweet or subscribe, you're not supposed to get the bet. But we're laying it with Georgia tonight. That's the plan. I tail Razor Sharp Picks on all my college football shit. He's been incredible throughout the last season. So shout out my guy Razor for putting money in my pocket, and shout out Razor for putting money in my pocket because I bet him $100 straight up, just a friendly little side wager that the Minnesota Vikings would have a better regular season record than the Packers. Got paid out last night. That felt good. That's maybe my favorite bet so far from the last calendar year. That one felt delicious coming from a Packers fan. All right. We're going to go ahead and get back on track here. A couple interesting dogs to go ahead and get the night started out. Next up, we have got none other than Allan Nascimento taking on Carlos Hernandez. Allan Nascimento, a massive minus 345 favorite over Carlos Hernandez, the plus 285 underdog. And guys, Allan Nascimento is a very interesting situation. Trains out of shoot the box, dyes his hair along with the former champ Dubronx Oliveira, 19-6. He was thrown to Jake Hadley after going 0-2 in the UFC. UFC brass thinking, we're going to set up Jake Hadley, give him an easy spot, get him a win on his first fight. Went full wet blanket. Pulled the big upset, stuck to his grappling, sat on top of Jake Hadley and didn't let him breathe. Saved his job, and now he's got to fight Carlos Hernandez, who is 8-1. He also won his Contender Series victory as well, his debut in the UFC afterward, both by split. This is one of those guys, Liam, that you can just count on to make the fight close. He never goes away. He's always in your face. He doesn't have big power, lots of volume, good chin, good pace, good cardio. Every single fight that he's in is close, and it goes full 15 minutes. So we've got Allan Nascimento, who is a grappler by nature. I would say Carlos Hernandez has a slight edge in the striking due to the volume and the pace, I would think, on the feet. But he's also a guy that's nearly impossible to keep down. He's got a 70% takedown defense rating so far off of his UFC fights, but it's the get-up game. He's another one of these guys that just refuses to settle for that bottom position. You would think Allan Nascimento probably can take this guy down, tie him into knots, but at the same time, I'm not entirely sure he can complete those takedowns on a guy like Hernandez. And if he can complete the takedowns, I'm not sure he can keep him down. And if he can't keep him down for 15 minutes, this fight gets very interesting with a guy who's only got a 50% striking defense versus a cardio machine who's going to put out 6 significant strikes per minute in the UFC cage. Call me crazy, Liam. This is another greasy dogger pass type of situation for me. I'm not ready to trust Nascimento at minus 350 for me. I would be looking at the dog via decision, look at the split decision props, crazy shit like that. But slightly into this thing going over and slightly into Carlos Hernandez maybe pulling off the upset. What about you, buddy?
This is another weird one because, when I went back and watched Carlos Hernandez, he was getting messed up by Daniel Barras in that first round. Like, he was kind of getting mugged in that fight. He got taken down in that spot. He landed a big knee on the way in for a takedown, and Barras just ate it, kept moving forward, picked him up and slammed him on a double leg takedown, and even got to the back a couple times. He got to the back standing, he got to the back and had, mounted, hooks in, trying to throw some punches. And then he kind of gassed out a little bit, started to get put into bad positions himself. And that was impressive to me that Hernandez was able to respond to that adversity. But against a talented grappler like Allan Nascimento, is it a red flag that you're getting, your back taken pretty routinely by Barras? I do think that it is a red flag. Allan Nascimento, he's not going to watch that and say, I'm going to take his back for 15 minutes and win the fight. It's like, that's what he's going to try and do in this spot. I think he's a very talented guy, especially in the grappling department. That's what he brings to the table. If Hernandez is able to stuff some shots, stay on top, mix in some of his own ground and pound, maybe he's able to get the win here. But I just feel like he's going to be negated for a lot of this fight. I feel like that's what was happening to him against Barras when he was fresh. And I think that's what Allan Nascimento did really well against Hadley, who's another prospect people were very high on. And he just kind of got shut down by a savvy older vet who's got a really talented ground game, who's had a ton of fights. And I think he's a talented fighter in his own right. So I think Allan Nascimento, with his experience, with his ability to fight for a hard 15 minutes, should be able to win this fight. But am I willing to invest in the price? No, I'm certainly not. So it's another fight that just seems like a clear pass for me when I have a pretty strong lean. But, the odds makers agree. The public betting so far agrees. It's, I just agree. I agree with the general sentiment. So I don't need to put my money out there and just hope it falls back in my pocket. I don't think there's much of an edge. I just think Allan should win the fight. But if he's not able to get to his positions, he's probably going to lose the fight. It's one of those clear dynamics.
I think that makes perfect sense to me, Liam. And I do just want to repeat for the people who may potentially be stumbling on us, if you may be new to the show, we're talking betting. We're talking sports betting. So obviously, if we make a bet, we will let you know. At this point, I don't have one on any of the fights that we have discussed to this point, and I lean with the underdog because of that price tag, because I'm not convinced I want to lay minus 350 with the favorite here in this spot, because this thing could be close. It could go to a split decision. Does the favorite win? Probably. But this is one that I want to watch live. If he doesn't have success with those takedowns, I'm jumping on the dog. Live bet opportunity, baby. But right now, I've got absolutely nothing on it. And I'm very curious to see how these guys handle, because it's kind of like one of those immovable object meets the unstoppable force situations. If Nascimento can blanket people the way we saw him in his last fight, he should get the win. But if he can't get those takedowns on a guy like Hernandez that's notoriously hard to get down and keep down, then this fight gets very interesting very quickly. My guy Danny Lopez in the chat. What's up, buddy? Thanks for hanging out and watching. And we've got, there we go. Julie updated her profile picture. There we go. Now we can see your beautiful face. Thank you for hanging out, Julie. Definitely appreciate it. All right, everybody. We are moving right along at a nice, brisk pace here. Next up, we have got Mateus Mendonça taking on Javid Basharat. And Javid is maybe, well, you know what? I'm going to take that away. Javid is not maybe. Javid absolutely is my favorite Dana White Contender Series fighter from the 2021 class. Absolutely love this guy. We've gone to the bank with him a couple of times. Last time out, we cashed the Basharat Bros parlay, which was just beautiful to take home at the end of the day. 13-0, taking on 10-0. I mean, we've got some big stakes here in this fight, Liam. You've got Mendonça, who looks solid. I mean, a fellow Contender Series winner stepping into the UFC cage, taking on a 13-0 proven UFC caliber fighter at this point. I'm having a tough time wrapping my brain around this matchmaking, frankly, because you would think Mendonça is a guy that you want to get behind. The way he's got that shiny record, the way with how young he is, 3 wins by knockout, 3 by sub, 3 by decision, 2-inch reach advantage, the shoot the box style, liking to get out there and bang and have exciting fights, throwing kicks from all over the place, the spinning heel kick. Like, this is a kid you want to push. But his first fight is Javid Basharat, a guy who has proven that he can beat fighters like Tony Gravely. Like, I'm not sure who the UFC is really behind or pushing in this spot, quite frankly, because Javid is a guy that I would expect to kind of get a little bit more of that star power treatment, maybe get a couple of softer matchups, keep him going the right direction with that undefeated record. They're going to throw one of these guys an L this quickly. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I love Javid's style, though. Absolutely love the way he came off that win over Gravely. He's a killer. He's got 5 knockouts, 6 subs. This fight should be violent. He knows how to use his reach extremely well. Good side-to-side movement. He likes to use those low kicks, almost like a jab kind of range finding with him. He's got an absolute missile of a right hand. That thing comes from way out of range and connects with people. Sneaky right hand, uppercuts, and strong level changes. When this guy wants to get you to the mat, that's pretty much where it's going. He has left his neck out there a couple times. Gravely threatened with that guillotine a few times and had to end up letting it go, but you got to be careful with that kind of thing. We saw that bite me in the ass last card of the year with a guy that was a -600 favorite in the second round, left his neck out there and got it snatched by an Ov. No surprise there that a Nurmagomedov pulled the comeback, but c'est la vie. I move on. We were talking about a different fight. I think Javid Basharat is worthy of being the favorite here in this spot. I don't know that he should be this large of a favorite. You guys know I like the Dana White Contender Series fade. You know I like to fade fighters that are stepping up in class. That first test, sometimes they tend to struggle and fail. The Mankanda also looks like he might be the goods to me. So another fight that I'm struggling with because I think I may just want to pass on it, potentially an under violence bet. I know neither of these guys have lost. Neither of these guys have been finished. So it's kind of hard to argue for violence, but the offense that they're both bringing to the table is kind of more what I'm looking at here. Can't wait to hear your thoughts, Liam. What do you got here on this one?
Yeah, this is a fascinating fight. I saw on Tapology, 8% of people are picking Mendonça to win this fight. So looks like everybody's pretty much made up their mind on who's going to get this one done. I understand why. Javid Basharat, he trains with a great camp. He trains with great fighters. Aljamain Sterling and these guys, they're getting rounds with him. He's proven it now in the UFC. Tony Gravely basically fought everybody. He's been around forever. He's been fighting good guys for a long time on the regional scene. And now everybody's starting to get exposed to him on a broader level. That was an important fight for him to win. That was a big fight. But did it show me that he's lights out and nobody in the UFC is going to be able to touch him? It didn't quite show me that either. I feel like Tony Gravely, he's susceptible to being finished. He's shown that in a lot of his fights. He's getting better every time out. He's working with the American top team guys. But I think that when I watch a guy like Mendonça, he's got huge power for the division, right? And not a lot of guys have huge power in the division, period. He's putting guys out badly on the regional scene. And then when you look at his submission skills, he's not lacking for talent. Coming out of shoot box, Diego Lima, he secured a bunch of wins by submission. Looking back at my Dana White Contender Series preview article, I had recommended that you look at the under 2.5 rounds and him to win by submission in that fight. I think he ended up knocking the guy dead. Because that's what he does. He finds finishes. And like you mentioned, potential finishing angle here. I think the more live finisher in the early going, maybe Mendonça. I think as the fight goes on, Javid Basharat has proven he could fight for 15 minutes. He could wear somebody down. He could kind of just be tough and, be a prick, lay it on as the fight goes on. You think of that Oran Kalon fight. He basically just stretched that out. He could have finished at any point. And he made a point of extending that fight and gritting it out. I feel like that's what he could do here to get the win. That's what he's going to have to do. He's going to want to wrestle. He's going to want to grapple, try and negate position a little bit because Mendonça is extremely dynamic. So if you let this guy have space early, these are the kind of guys I bet on traditionally as underdogs, scary banger from Brazil that can also grapple and everybody thinks he's going to lose. So, Joe Anderson Brito and Andre Fili was a great example from last year where everybody was telling me, no, dude, File's the parlay piece. I'm like, maybe this guy in the first 45 seconds points him because he's got huge power. It's you got to take that into account, especially when we're talking about probabilities. We're talking about minus 350. That's a huge indication. I point you guys to the mug, minus 300, 75%, right? 75%. That's a lot to clear. And does Javid Basharat win this fight greater than 50% of the time? It's not hard to argue that. He's got more UFC experience. He's been around these championship level fighters. He's clearly got the skill set. But is it to say that he is clearing 75% against another dangerous fighter who's got big power and submission skills? I don't know about that.
That's where I'm at too, Liam. That is where I'm at too. I want to, this is my classic. If you're doing your just win parlay, sure. Like, I think that Javid Basharat wins. I think he's the guy that gets his hand raised. I don't do well with just win parlays. I like looking for the dogs and the value, and I can't justify minus 350. Minus 200? Sure. Okay. Now we're talking. That's more in my range. But we move $1.50 the wrong direction. I don't think I can get there, man. I'm going to go ahead and pick Javid to go ahead and get the win. These psycho underdogs from Brazil, man, especially, Liam, women's MMA. When you get an underdog from Brazil in women's MMA, someone you haven't seen compete in 2 straight years, watch the hell out for that chick, because they just murder people in the UFC. I found that out the hard way last year trying to go against a couple of those spots. So be warned, everybody. Be warned. This is a sketchy fight that I am not confident in whatsoever. There's a couple of those on this one, because this first fight back, man, we're getting a lot. This is a glorified Contender Series card, Liam. This is Contender Series 2.0 on Saturday is essentially what we're dealing with here.
Contender Series FC.
Yeah, basically that's what it has become right now. And there's some volatility involved in that, my friend. They're looking for finishes. They're looking for people that are not as polished, and boy, howdy, that is what we have got. Next up, we have got, where'd my graphic go? Oh, I am gonna kill somebody if this one didn't load up. Oh my goodness. We've got Rębecki taking on Nick Fiore, and I am struggling for some reason. I apologize, guys. New system here, working with the graphics, and for some reason, I don't think I have this one on here, and that pisses me off because I worked hard on these. Damn it. All right. Well, I guess we're just going to have to go without the graphics here for this one, going old school style. Let me get my Tapology page up here for you people so we can at least see what we're dealing with here. That is frustrating.
It's always the worst when you do the hard work and then it doesn't come through on the stream. My man, I've been there, so no worries. I understand.
And I know I've got it saved. You know what I mean? Like it's on my desktop somewhere. And of course, like live on the show, there was one fight that's going to slip through the cracks and bite me in the ass. All right, here we go, folks. I'm correcting the issue. I apologize. We're going to go ahead and get this up here for you. Not that one. Son of a bitch. All right. There we go. There we go. we're going to get our dental ads back here from Tapology. I better be getting a cut of that shit because of how many times I showed it off on my stream. See, there it is. Popped up right as we're talking about it. All right. We've got Mateus Rębecki taking on Nick Fiore, and I'm going to get that off the screen as quickly as possible. I'm pissed. I am not happy about this. Okay. So Rębecki is 16-1. Fiore is 6-0. Liam, this is another spot where I am just... We're getting these guys that okay. Tangent time. I don't know if I like the watered down product the UFC is becoming. I love that we have fights every single weekend. I really do. I love the Contender Series. I really do. It's fun. It's exciting. They smash. It's fantastic. But it's been a long time since we've had 5-0, 6-0 guys getting into the UFC. And it's starting to become the trend again, Liam. And I'm not happy with it. I mean, when you've got guys like Bo Nickel that it's like, bro could fight top 10 tomorrow. Like, okay, let's make an exception. But there's so many of these guys now that we just don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know what we've got. We don't know if they bring the skill set we need to the table. And I'm not a fan of all these guys because I don't know. It fills out a card. I get it. And I want as much MMA as I possibly can get. But from a betting perspective, it makes it really difficult. At any rate, from what I can tell, Nick Fiore has just got sick BJJ, man. That's the one thing. Like 5 first-round finishes on his 6-0 shiny undefeated record. Trains with killers like Rob Font, Calvin Kattar. So he comes from a good gym. He's got people to vouch for him at the UFC level. nasty back takes. Man, when this guy gets on your back, it is over, and it's over in a hurry. But I've got so many unknowns about his skill set. Rębecki, on the other hand, he's another Dana White Contender Series guy, made it to the UFC. It's his debut, and he's a brutal finisher. Big, explosive power. I mean, he's got decent boxing, but he's another one of these guys that like sells out for the overhand right. He just tries to get in your face and wing bombs, looking to punch his way in with combos, a little reckless, frankly, with his forward pressure, but he's got heavy hips. He's got a strong sprawl. A lot of people have tried to get him off the feet so that they can have some opportunity to beat him on the ground, and he's got good hips. This guy gets his hips way back, good top pressure, and he sticks to you hard chest to chest. If any of you have done wrestling or jiu-jitsu, when you get on top of somebody, my coach always used to tell me, get on top of your opponent and pretend that a murderer came up behind you and stabbed through their heart to your heart. Like, you want to be exactly like post to post, chest to chest. That's how you lock somebody down with your body weight. And this guy does that. Ribeiro does that very cleanly, in my opinion. So as much as I want to say Fiore has the chance to capitalize on a mistake, use one of those slick back takes. We've got the strong power hip wrestler versus the jiu-jitsu guy. And more often than not, the wrestler is just able to go ahead and keep it in their wheelhouse and put these guys on their back. Fiore by sub is another one of those ones like Flick, where it's like that's going to be his path, and he's taking on a guy that maybe he can take advantage of, but he's also taking on a guy that's got all the good vitamins in the world. Rębecki is puffy, Liam. Like, this guy, they've got so much injected in this guy that he's swollen. Like, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and say Rębecki probably by knockout in this spot. But again, another fight that's super low level. If I'm going to do anything, I'm looking violence. Rębecki minus 700. Fiore is like a plus 510 underdog at this point. Liam, what do you got for me here? What are we looking at?
When this was Mateus Rębecki against Umar Morales, I was so ready to nuke the submission for Mateus Rębecki, because this guy is the real deal on the ground. He's very, very talented. But things that have not been plus EV for me historically, fading Renzo Gracie black belts. I've tried it a couple times, even with very talented grapplers, even with grapplers I thought won the fight, like Amanda Hebas against my girl Caitlin Chukagian. Fading Renzo Gracie, brown and black belts just has not worked out for me personally. Now, in this spot, you're being asked to pay a huge price for obvious reason. You know, one guy was supposed to be here. One guy's being brought in on short notice. One thing that I will point out, we saw something similar in an early fight. We talked about Charles Johnson and Jimmy Flick. Jimmy Flick on sharp markets is actually, you know, reasonably priced relative to the rest of the market. He's not at one of these huge explosive prices. Look at Nick Fiore. On the sharpest markets in the world, they're giving you the best odds out there. And I think that's because he hasn't proven he could go at this level. And a lot of people are going to look at the record of Rębecki and say, he's got double the fights. He's also talented at grappling. He also can wrestle. He can get on top of this guy. Why can't he win the fight? And I can't really push back on that. I think he's probably going to get on top. The one thing about guys that are a little bit muscle bound, as opposed to jiu-jitsu guys, the one thing about wrestlers as opposed to jiu-jitsu guys at times is that wrestlers treat it like a sprint. And it's 100% all out from second one to the end. And we've seen actually Fiore was finished via slam in his only loss in the amateurs as well. So, oh, there you go. I love it. I love it.
I had to do it. I'm like, people wondering why I'm like leaning off to the side and looking away while you're talking. There's the graphic, bitches. Sorry.
I love it.
Continue.
No, you're good, man. I'll basically just wrap it up by saying that Mateus Rębecki, he's extremely talented. And I think that at his age, at his experience level, this is a fight he needs to win. He's going to come out here very aggressive. He's going to look for the finish. And just because somebody's more talented at jiu-jitsu does not mean that they will not get finished, because sometimes athleticism gaps are huge. Sometimes guys are just more strong, more prepared, ready to go on this night at this level. And I think that we're definitely going to see that preparedness for the fight from Rębecki. But if the fight gets extended longer and longer, I do wonder about his muscular build and, you know, his explosive nature. Like you mentioned, selling out on all of his overhand rights. How does that last for 15 minutes? You know, it does become a little bit of a question mark. So that's what I want to see from Rębecki over time, is just proving how he can manage his pace against elite level resistance that he'll face in the UFC. But so far, I mean, the guy's just blown me away. I loved betting his submission prop on the Contender Series, and I look forward to seeing, what kind of prices we can get again in the future. But I don't know that I'm going to fade a Renzo Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner by sub here. I think the KO is a little more likely.
Probably so. What do you think about the total on this one, though? They've got it set at a pick'em price tag at 1.5, minus 120. It looks like, ever so slightly juiced to the under. And I kind of feel like, these are Contender Series level fighters, that violence probably could be the answer in this one. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it probably gets violent, but I do question a little bit, what if they just grapple each other in a pretty competitive fashion until one of them gasses out and then gets finished late? When they set the pick'em price on this over under 1.5, it's not really showing their hand. They don't really tell you. They're basically telling you the fight's probably not going to go to decision, plus 200 on the goes to decision. They're trying to tempt you there, but they're not really tipping their hand. They got minus 120 to the under, minus 110 to the over, might as well be minus 105, minus 107 a piece. Like, doesn't really make a huge difference there. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll be interested to see how the market reacts to that. I'm sure that they're going to come in on the under here, but one of the things that we noticed a little bit last year, short notice replacements would come in. Everybody expects this guy's going to get finished in the first round. And sometimes, like Sadiq Youssef and Don Shainis, it happens in 30 seconds. But when it doesn't happen in that initial exchange, oftentimes we see it get protracted and it becomes a second, third round affair. The person's maybe not had 6 weeks to prepare for this style. They've had 3 weeks, 4 days, a week and a half. Those are not the same kind of preparations. And a lot of times guys are just looking for the win. This is about money. You get double your paycheck if you win the fight. So they're like, yeah, I was going to try and finish this guy. I had all these plans in mind. Now I need to get the W. And we might see a little bit more conservative approach based on that short notice nature of the fight.
Okay. I don't mind it whatsoever. Guys, like I said, I hate to say it. You guys know me. I like to have action, like to have lots of bets, like to have lots of opinions. This is a sketchy ass card to start the year. I'm just happy MMA is back and we can talk about it and have some banter back and forth. It is good shit. By the way, speaking of MMA, guys, you all know, make sure you check out Spectation Sports. If you want to use my promo code over there, diehard gets you 20% off. They're doing regional scene MMA. And just this past week, if any of you are like the old Ultimate Fighter level guys like myself, Joe Giannetti just defended his title over there for Cage Titans. And it was actually a hell of a card. Main event was a little bit of a slog, but the rest of the card was really, really fun. So make sure you check out Spectation Sports. They're doing good stuff for the regional scene for us here. All right, next up we have got, okay, I swear it better be there, Abdul Razak Alhassan taking on Claudio Ribeiro in a pick'em. Liam, we don't have many pick'ems on this card. We have got a straight up minus 110 either side here, pick'em price tag. Abdul Razak Alhassan is such an interesting case. I still just cannot wrap my brain around this guy. He's getting older, 37 years old, I believe, at this point, and he's just got that death touch head kick. However, if he doesn't hit you with one of those nukes, if he doesn't get you out of there in round one, he doesn't win the fight, Liam. He doesn't win the fight outside of round one, but he can nuke absolutely anybody in round one. And actually, frankly, I thought he beat Joaquin Buckley. That fight went to a split. It was close. It was razor thin close. I thought Alhassan was about to get his first ever non-round one win in that fight, but they raised the other guy's hand. It just is what it is. So maybe he's smartening up. Maybe he's just slowing down a little bit. I'm not sure which one it is at this point, but definitely have to respect the power and the danger coming across the cage from you from Abdul Razak Alhassan. His opponent, Claudio Ribeiro, 10-2. And I like what I see from this kid so far. He's one of the fastest starters I think we've seen on Dana White's Contender Series. You go back and watch that fight, Liam. and the pace was blistering for about 20 seconds, and then they hit the brakes with a giant cup check. I felt so bad for these guys. The biggest nut shot in Dana White Contender Series history put this fight that was supposed to be over in about 30 seconds on ice so they could let the guy recover. He's got fast hands. Claudio Ribeiro's got really fast hands, and he strikes well at range. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage in this spot. And it kind of reminds me of the Munir Lazzez fight. I got in big on Munir Lazzez when he fought Abdul Razak Alhassan back in 2020, Liam. One of my favorite bets that I've made over the last couple of years. And he just didn't ever let Abdul Razak Alhassan really get going. You know, he kind of picked and poked at him, kept it technical, kept the space, kept the distance, and pieced him apart for 15 minutes. I can see Claudio Ribeiro doing something like that in this spot and really putting that reach and that range of his to work. I'm not sure I like the pick and price tag, however. I mean, they're pricing Abdul Razak Alhassan almost like he's dead at this point. You know what I mean? He's been not really favorable recently. But I mean, you go back and he was a minus 310 over Jacob Malkoun. He was a minus 210 over Chaos Williams. He was a minus 350 over Munir Lazzez. Like, they really have decided that he's not worth it anymore if he's coming in here minus 110. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this fight and which side you end up on, Liam.
Yeah, this is a fight where I look at it and I say to myself, you know, the bookmakers are going to tell me something interesting here. So I start breaking down the lines, and you know, this is probably the first time. I'd have to double check this. I'd have to fact check myself here, but this is probably the first time in his UFC career that you're seeing the bookmaker respecting the opponent to win by knockout and to win by knockout in the first round more than Abdul Razak Alhassan. I think that's interesting off the rip. I think when you look at a fight like this and you say to yourself, you know, why is Claudio Ribeiro getting this shot? You know, you got a guy with a lot of experience. Alhassan's fought a lot of guys in the UFC, a lot of guys who've been around for a while. So why would they give Claudio Ribeiro, this guy who's 10-1, you know, with a bunch of big knockouts? So why is he coming off the Contender Series to this opportunity? I think it's because he fits the criteria for guys that have given Alhassan problems in the past. You know, you look at a Chaos Williams. What did he bring to the table? He's powerful and he's fast, and he's willing to throw on the counter like a reckless, wild striker will at times. You know, when they accept, I might get hit with one shot here, but I'm going to land something that kills this guy. And that's what Ribeiro does. And if you've watched any of his fights, he done killed some guys. And I think when I'm looking at his line right now, you know, he's basically being lined as very, very likely to win this fight by knockout. You know, his money line price is basically the same as him to win inside the distance. It's basically the same as him to win by knockout, which is something that, again, historically was true for Alhassan. Now people are coming in on Alhassan by decision. Why? Because it's plus 575, because the guy hasn't been showing the same knockout prowess in these recent bouts. Think about the fact that Joaquin Buckley has basically been finished in all of his professional losses. Split decision with Alhassan because he's out there trying to wrestle him now. He's working with Sayf Saud. He's got good coaching. It's not like he's just out on a river, you know, trying to figure it out. It's like he's got the right people behind him, but he's getting a little bit older. Maybe some of those physical tools are starting to even off a little bit, where he's not the most dynamic guy in the weight class. He's just an average amount of dynamism for the weight. So I feel like all those factors are contributing to why this line has been adjusted to where it's at. And I do think Claudio Ribeiro is probably the side here. He's a little bit fresher in his career, in my opinion, and he's a very dangerous guy right now. He's got a ton of confidence. And on the other side, Alhassan, you know, he's kind of been struggling to find his stride. I think those are two guys moving in opposite directions. Alhassan, he's got a bunch of big fights, bunch of big knockouts, might have got on an early good contract with the UFC where they're like, this guy's going to the top. And now, a couple drop-offs in a row, we're looking at the prelims of the first card of the year that we just called Contender Series FC, and he's on it. Not a good sign for you, especially if you're making a lot of bread. So I think that this is probably going to be a tough fight for him, and a fight that he must win for his career.
Love it. Love to hear it, man. I love to hear it. I mentioned the Munir Lazzez comparison. I wish I was getting a plus number. I really do. But I'm interested. Anytime you get that, 4 to 6 inch reach advantage ballpark, that's such a cheat code in MMA, man. If you can't touch your opponent because they're keeping you at distance like that, that's such a big thing that is really hard for people to get around. Hopefully Claudio Ribeiro lives up to the hype. Can't wait to see that one. That's going to be a fun fight for sure. Nope in the chat. What's up, my guy? Appreciate you tuning in. I'm not sure what's happened with my browser. There it goes. There it goes. All right, we're back. We had a little hiccup. Sorry about that, everybody. What's up, Nope's Corner? Thank you for joining the show, tuning in, listening. We got 120 live viewers, everybody. As usual, smash the like button for us. Let the algorithm know you like your content hot and fresh right here from Pub Sports Radio, the Die Hard MMA podcast, and subscribe to Liam Picks Fights, because our guy is always sharing his knowledge with the community, doing some big things, had an absolutely crushing 2022. You guys, if you want to be with somebody, Liam's your guy. All right, next up, I got to work a system out, Liam. I got to figure something out, because I upload all these damn things, and now I'm having a hard time finding them. There we go. Okay, I figured it out. I'm looking for Nurmagomedov. I saved a little time. I put it under Umar. That's my own fault. Next up, we've got Umar Nurmagomedov taking on Hani Barcelos in maybe the most talked about fight on this card, Liam. All I've heard all week is how can Umar be a minus 700 favorite? You got Ronnie Barcelos. It is disrespectful to make this man plus 500 as an underdog. And frankly, I've said very similar things about Ronnie Barcelos for a long time. We've talked about how incredible he is, how well-rounded he is, how he's the dark horse of the division. He just keeps finding ways to get better, staying in fights. And then he loses to Victor Henry. that just kind of opened everybody's eyes. Everyone goes, oh, that's maybe we need to pump the brakes on him just a little bit. He lost to Timur Valiev. Timur was supposed to be a big deal too. So that's the kind of thing where we've given him a couple of passes. People are starting to wake up a little bit and realize that maybe 35-year-old Ronnie Barcelos isn't all he was cracked up to be. Umar Nurmagomedov, on the other hand, cousin Umar, father's plan Umar, 15-0, shiny, undefeated Russian monster who ran through Sergey Morozov, Brian Kelleher, and Nate Maness. Yeah, I can get behind that. That makes a whole lot of sense. I think Umar is a future champion, Liam. I think this kid is an absolute stud. He's got brutal, dominating wrestling, flows, forces you to give up your back. And that's really his whole game, right? Like, he will take your back and choke you out if you give it to him. He has no problem grinding you if you can't get him there. Someone's got to show me you can beat him. That's really what this comes down to. I mean, you go back to the Timur Valiev fight for Ronnie Barcelos. He struggled a little bit with the grappling in that spot, but he's got a 93% takedown defense rating. That's all this fight comes down to, me, Liam. Ronnie Barcelos has a 93% takedown defense rating over his UFC tenure, and that's massive. That is a crazy number at the UFC level to be holding up. And it's going to come down to who cracks first. Can Umar crack the takedown defense? And if he can, I think he smothers Ronnie Barcelos like he has everybody else. If he can't crack the 93% takedown defense rating, we're going to learn a lot about what else Umar Nurmagomedov brings to the table. And the striking is still a pretty decent sized question mark, in my opinion. So it's another spot where, like, I got to pick the favorite. I am so tired of betting against Russian monsters and losing on these underdogs because they just can't quite get it done over the offs. But I got to see it from Umar. You know what I mean? It's a spot where I trust him, but not at minus 700. I'm picking the favorite. Probably no bet on this fight. May even go so far as to say Umar by decision would be the only way that I would look, just because it's so incredibly hard to actually finish somebody like Ronnie Barcelos. His one loss was by sub, so maybe that's on the table. Lots of question marks, Liam. How do you feel about this fight? What are you doing with the biggest favorite on the card?
You know, this is a fascinating fight, and you don't always say that about somebody who's a minus 700. So in that way, I think that's why this is a very talked about fight. You know, normally you don't see somebody with the quality of skills of Hani Barcelos in this underdog price range. You know, that's the observation people are making. But he is 35 years of age, and we are talking about bantamweight, and just not a lot of guys that are competing at the elite level of bantamweight at 35 years of age. You know, we just saw TJ Dillashaw, a very talented fighter, championship level fighter. He was completely falling apart because he's had a bunch of fights and he's a little bit older, a little bit longer in the tooth. He wrestled before that. And you look at Raoni Barcelos, how did he get all the skills? Was it just by sitting around absorbing knowledge? No, he did a lot of work on the mats. Like, the guy is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He spent a lot of time wrestling. I'm sure there's some natural wear and tear over time. And, one of the proudest bets that I had last year was that I did bet Victor Henry at plus 425 in that spot. He was coming in an extremely experienced guy. He'd had a million fights in Japan. He's as ready as he's going to be to fight. So he came in and he threw a ton of volume. That's what he's known to do. And I was impressed with Assunção's ability to shut his game down in the subsequent fight. I really think that Victor Henry is a talented fighter. So it's not like Raoni Barcelos had a bad loss there, but it's a loss that you can't have if you're trying to be on a title trajectory and you're fighting a UFC newcomer, right? So I think, for Raoni Barcelos, that's probably a little bit of a wake-up call. But then he gets back out there, he rebounds, he gets a good performance under his belt. He's still got all the skills in the world. He's still very talented. His boxing is still very potent. He's going to be able to get off on a lot of guys with that boxing game and keep them at bay. But I'm a little bit worried about the chances of him getting knocked out. After absorbing so many significant strikes, you could do that once, but in that fight, he looked like he was time traveling a couple of times. He was holding on to him, bleeding out the mouth and looking around like, how much time is left with this guy? Like, he just had spent a lot. He poured out the jug in that fight. And I think that Umar, he's a really tough guy to deal with. He's going to bring a lot of pressure. He's going to try and exert that. When you've got a 9-year youth advantage on your side, what you can normally bring to bear is that cardio advantage. And Umar can really push for the full 15 minutes, and he can really make you work. And I think that early in the fight, he's not going to be able to just get easy takedowns and make a clown out of Raoni Barcelos, but I think he can make Raoni work at a pace rate that he's uncomfortable with. That's what Victor Henry did. He exploited pace, and I think that Umar's going to learn that lesson. I don't think he's going to finish him early, but I think the chances of him finishing late are there. I think whether it's on top, whether it's, with the crazy kicks on the feet, when Raoni starts to get a little bit slower and his hands start to come down a little bit and he starts to breathe heavy, I think that's when you could get him. And he's a really talented guy, but he's been around for a while. He didn't quite reach those pinnacles of his goals, and that could sometimes lead to guys starting to just come out there with what they've got. And if that's what he does here, I think he's going to get messed up. If he comes out with new skills, all credit and respect to him, but not a money line side that I'm going to be backing this week on either side of this fight. Again, sharp markets, what are they telling us? Right now, they're holding the biggest prices on the underdog here. They're begging you to come in and bet it at their shop, probably because they already took a lot of money on the favorite here. So I think Umar deserved favorite. After you start getting to minus 500, 600, 700, we're now talking about 85, 86, 87. Where is my margin coming from? Where is my win equity over the expected? Maybe it's 100%, or, maybe he just comes out there and ragdolls them every time they fight. But, it's MMA. How many times have we seen somebody go out there, throw a kick, they hurt themselves? Take a step backwards wrong on their ankle, they roll it, they fall back over. We can't believe the ticket. So it just gets to a level of laughability at a certain point when we're laying these huge favorites. And I think you're going to want to look for a prop or just look for another fight on this card. Look for an upcoming fight that you could break down. It's just, you don't have to force the action here. I think Umar wins the fight. I think he probably does it via late finish, but the book's pretty confident he's going to a decision here, guys. Minus 200 on sharp books for Umar Nurmagomedov to win the fight by decision. So they're saying you got to lay $200 to win $100 on him to win by this method. It's like they're really pretty crazy. Confident in that. Yeah. But I think that the late finish is there, and I think people might get overzealous saying, I can cut the chalk in half. Easy play on the decision. But this is a dangerous fellow, and he's proven he can get the submission. He could force you into bad spots. He can hurt you. He can finish with his hands. He can finish with his feet. So I just don't want to sleep on that.
He's also young.
9 years.
That's really kind of the big factor here for me, man. Sorry, I'm texting my wife to let the dog out because she's bugging me. All right. So we don't know what to expect from these young kids. Like when they disappear for 4 or 5 months at a time, they come back looking monstrous, improved, insanely better than they were before. And the UFC is throwing Raoni Barcelos to this guy thinking they're not going to fumble or Nurmagomedov bag, Liam. Like, they've been here before. They know what they're doing with the Nurmagomedovs. They're not about to let this kid look bad in a fight. And Barcelos is a guy that everybody has a hard time looking good against. Would not be surprised whatsoever if he comes out and wraps up that sub. The one loss Hani Barcelos has had on his entire professional career by sub. I could absolutely see that being the case here with this young stud of a kid who just kind of comes up and beasts his way through an older dog who maybe has kind of lost the winds in his sails just a little bit. A lean decision, but show me a number. let's see what the number is on that sub prop. I don't hate it, man. I definitely picking Umar. The one thing, guys, I will give you your gambling PSA for the week here. Don't bother parlaying Umar. I mean, what is the 700 going to do for you in your parlays, right? If your two-legger goes from minus 110 to plus 105 and that makes you giggle, go for it. I just, for me, those are banana peel price tags that Liam is talking about. We saw, 6 main event injuries last year where guys' legs popped and fell over for no reason. And like, those are the kinds of things that bust your parlays. Personally, not worth it to me to add a minus 700 favorite to a parlay to move the line 10 cents. It just doesn't make sense to me personally. So I would suggest maybe not doing that. But yeah, he probably does pass this test with flying colors. And maybe you go, Clint, you're silly. I'll take the extra 15 cents. Okay, sure. Go right ahead. Just my personal approach on it. All right, everybody. We got 122 live in the chat, considering there's a collegiate football game on right now. That ain't half bad. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us this evening. As always, smash the like button. We're getting down towards the end of this thing, so I can go hopefully sweat out some action here on the college football game. And if you partake in the NHL degenerate action, you'll notice there have already been 3 goals scored in the first game. We just need 6. Let's fucking go. We're halfway there, and it's the first period only. It doesn't get much better than that. All right. Back on track here. Got to tone it down, calm it down just a little bit. Don't get all defensive on me. Next fight up, Punahele Soriano taking on Roman Hopilov. I love this fight. Liam. This is going to be so good. Puna is a minus 155 favorite. Roman Hopilov is the plus 135 underdog. Oh, boy. And we've got matching 9-2 records. We've got a slight reach advantage for Roman Hopilov. We've got a Dana White Contender Series stud in Puna training out of Extreme Couture who's growing up in front of our eyes. Like this is a fight, man. This is a good one. I like the storylines. I like the trajectories. This is a good fight in my opinion. So you've got Puna, who's got the wrestling, decent wrestling background when he decides to use it, but he only shoots about 1 takedown per UFC fight. So it's not really a thing he goes to. He just wants to swing bungalows. This man likes to get in there and throw big old power hooks. He is a youthful version of Yoel Romero, Liam. This guy likes to explode and reload. He gasses out. He slows down, takes some big deep breaths, and then he does it all over again. He just keeps on going, even after redlining, finds his way back to the big power shots. Doesn't do much in the way of combinations, kind of big one pot shot type of power punches. He'll chain 2 or 3 of them together, especially if he's got you hurt. He will flurry on you and look for that finish. Good, strong sprawl, big physical power type of guy. Puna's fun. Puna's just fun to watch. Now, Roman Hopilov, on the other hand, I was ready to call this kid a fraud. Like I was ready to go like scorched earth on Roman Hopilov just a couple months ago. Coming to the UFC and getting booted by Carl Roberson. That's a bad look. You can't be losing to Carl Roberson. Now, that was 2019. He comes back against Albert Duraev. Well, I actually thought a little bit of something of Albert Duraev. And he showed off some serious toughness in that fight, Liam. He had a good first round, looked solid on the feet, and then he got mauled in round 2. I mean, there are refs that would have stopped that fight. That thing could have been over. He fought through it. He showed off a decent get-up game, protected himself, got to the fence, worked his way back up, and then round 3 was competitive again. Like that was a good fight for him to show he belonged in the UFC, in my opinion. And then he diced Alessio Di Chirico. Another measuring stick kind of fighter, in my opinion, but he looked great that night. The striking was on point. He had been criticized for being too low volume. I noted here that he stepped that output up by 30 strikes total, and 10 of those being significant. He had far more output in the Alessio Di Chirico fight. He's got that snapping head kick. He's got really fast hands. He does nice work chopping to the body. He goes to the low calf and then he just kind of flows, Liam. That's one thing I really like about Roman Hopilov is he just kind of flows out of the way of your strikes. His range control is really solid, and I like the way he worked the body of Albert Duraev. This is a spot where I'm extremely tempted to roll with the dog here on Roman Hopilov. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage, 87% takedown defense rating, southpaw versus southpaw, and frankly, Liam, anybody with his hairdo has a chin given to them by God. Do you ever notice the curly-headed fucks can't get knocked out? Like, unless you're sprinting at them from
Chase Hooper's like, hold my beer.
That's what I'm saying. You got Hopilov, you got Hooper, and before Masvidal got to him, you've got these guys with this hairstyle. I don't know what it is. It correlates to a chin every time. Every time it does. So I don't know. I trust Hopilov's durability in his chin in this spot. And frankly, the big thing for me in this one, Liam, is you go back and you look at Punahele Soriano's run, and the Brendan Allen fight sticks out like a sore thumb to me. A lot of people were just shoveling in on Puna in that spot, fading the chin of Brendan Allen. And Brendan stood with him for 15 straight minutes and just jabbed him to death. If Hopilov's smart, he does the same thing here. I think Brendan Allen wrote the book on how you beat Punahele Soriano, and I think Hopilov can follow that blueprint, lean on the durability, lean on the range, lean on that jab. I think I like the dog here. What about you, Liam? What are you doing in this one?
Yeah, this is another tricky fight because on the one hand, I bet Duraev pretty bigly against Roman Kopylov because if you're getting rear naked choked by Karl Roberson, I had some serious concerns about his grappling, but I thought he made a lot of really significant improvements in the time away. We got to remember, sometimes these guys deserve grace. How many people have we seen come in and lose their first UFC fight and just look very good in all their subsequent bouts? It's like, sometimes it's just really hard to get the jitters out of the way. If you got pulled in on short notice, you don't know if the guy was up for 5 nights in a row trying to get his medicals done and get over here and get this done. And now he's got a fight that he was not expecting against this killer in 3 days. It's like a lot of that's really nerve-wracking, right? It's like, yep. I think that Kopylov, he did very well when that fight was on the feet. Karl Roberson, a guy that traditionally doesn't go for a lot of takedowns, doesn't get a lot of top position, was like, I need to bail and go get on top of this guy. And when he started to mix it up a little bit and look for those advantageous positions, you could tell Kopylov got nervous. He started to make more mistakes. Against Duraev, he was in the worst positions he could be in. He still had a lot left to learn, but he just showed that he wanted to be there, and he really competed hard. I think that's why the UFC gave him a third fight. And then he went out there and got the win, hard-fought win. Alessio Di Chirico, say nice things, say bad things about him. The guy's been around for a very long time. He's been competing with guys in the middleweight ranks for a long time, looked very competitive with them at various points. He's just never set himself apart. He's never really gone over the top. He had one really nice knockout win, but other than that, he kind of just struggled to close the show. I remember the Zach Cummings fight. He kind of blew it in the last 10 seconds. He got head kicked and almost knocked out at the whistle. So it's just, or at the bell, excuse me. When I think of this kind of fight, I think that Punahele Soriano, you mentioned it. He let me down in that Brendan Allen spot. The Maximov fight, I thought he should have won easily. We've seen Maximov hasn't, panned out yet at this level necessarily. So I think all those things are not necessarily reasons to back him as a minus 155 favorite here. But does he have the upside in a lot of these positions? I think he does. I think he's a little more powerful, a little more likely to get the knockout. I think durability for durability, he's the more durable guy. As a matter of fact, I think that they're both very durable. But I think Punahele, he showed in that Brendan Allen fight, he was taking clean body kicks just over and over and walking forward and still trying to swing. He just gassed out faster. And I think that's the one thing where Kopylov in the third round is going to be live here if he's able to survive. But Puna is dangerous, man. And that's the one thing where knockout artists aren't going to find it every time. It's very hard to find that knockout. But when they land, they can just find guys. And I think Puna is used to fighting guys that are a little bit bigger than him, a little bit taller. And this is a guy that's going to want to stand with him. So I think that Puna is going to have the opportunity to feint some takedowns, get some overreactions, and follow up with those big uppercuts, big swinging right hands. I think he's probably going to find the knockout, but I think these guys might swing to a finish. I wouldn't be surprised if the later this fight goes, the more Kopylov starts to land cleanly, and the guy shows he throws in combination. He could really put guys away because of that. You know, the reason he finished late against the Kiriko, he just never let him off the hook. It was always 1, 2, 3 at a time. When he was throwing the shots, he wasn't just touching him with one shot at a time like a lot of strikers do. So I just thought it was an evolution in his game. We got to give him that credit that he's progressing every time out. Whereas Punahele Soriano, you know, knocking out Dolce Lungiambula doesn't really tell me a ton. You know, that's just something I feel like he could have done from the day he got to the UFC. So this is a good test for him. I will evaluate how I'm going to bet him moving forward based on this fight. But I also would like a little bit more plus money to invest in the question marks of Roman Kopylov. Because truth be told, Punahele Soriano, if he decided to come out here with a double leg takedown in the first 10 seconds, he's getting on top. There's no doubt in my mind. So that's the thing where how does Puna approach the fight? Most of the time he's a Hawaiian banger and just wants to swing it out. But sometimes when he starts to get tired, he's like, F this, I'm going to go for takedowns. And he's got that in his back pocket. So you got to remember, these guys that can wrestle, it's like riding a bicycle. He knows how to do it. He's not going to forget. And I think that if he decides to pull it out here, Kopylov showed against Karl Roberson, you can exploit him there if you have a background. It doesn't have to be the world's highest level. Nick Maximov, hard to exploit in that. He's got a good background of his own. This is not the same case. I think Kopylov is going to have to leverage his size and stay along the fence line. If it's out in the open, he's got big problems. If it's along the fence line, I think he'll be able to keep himself upright.
I like it. I like it. So I'm definitely leaning more with the dog myself. And just, I do want to go over real quick Puna's run here in the UFC. Like you mentioned, the Dolce Lungiambula knockout doesn't do a whole lot for me. And in fact, Dolce, I think, won round 1, if memory serves correctly, in that fight. He looked like he was the better of the two men until he, you know, big old muscle monster, got tired, slowed down, gassed out, got knocked out. Same old story with Dolce. But he lost the split to Nick Maximov, which has not aged well. The Brendan Allen loss, again, very surprising upset loss. Allen's looked pretty good since then. But then it was Dusko Todorovic. And that was the spot. Liam, that was the spot. I licked my chops on that spot. I was waiting to fade Dusko's chin forever, and then they matched him up with Puna. Whoo! That was a gift from the gods. And he knocked out Oscar Pichota. So 3 guys, the 3 guys that he's knocked out are all guys that I've frankly questioned. Now, I'm not questioning Puna's power. Please don't take this as me questioning Puna's power. I absolutely know that he's got vicious, brutal knockout power. But I have seen a couple guys with not even brickheads in Brendan Allen and Nick Maximov be able to take that punishment for 15 minutes straight. I think Kopylov can do that as well. With the improvements in the takedown defense, I think he can pull this one off. We'll see. I haven't bet it yet. I want to see where this number goes. Give me a little more plus.
The one thing I got to say, Clint, before you bet this, I need you to just look at Puna's Instagram and see what the guy is looking like right now, because my brother in Christ, I have seen guys with good physiques. This man, Punahele Soriano, right now, he posted his last weigh-in picture. Dude, the guy looks like $1 million. Then he posts something just recently. Oh my God, the guy is actually chiseled out of stones. I would not want to fight this guy right now, personally. You'd have to pay me a lot of coins to fight Punahele Soriano. Are you seeing what I'm seeing from 3 days ago?
That's sweet. That's sweet.
On the right,
this
top
one?
right corner.
This one we're looking at
top
here?
Right corner. Top
right corner. Okay.
Zoom in on that. This man, Punahele Soriano, has been working, bro. He's got every ab showing. At 185, the guy had a little bit of that little flab layer, not there, not to be found. He's gonna make weight as well.
Very true.
So if that guy decides to wrestle you when you're already at hip height with him, you get tossed. Did you know that he's like best friends and college roommates with Dan Ige? That was a story that I somehow missed in MMA that I found out this week.
I did not.
Yeah, they both know each other. They're both fighting on the card. So isn't that funny?
Good to know. And Kyle with the sharpest read in the chat saying, dude on the left looks like a broken down Anthony Smith. And I've heard that one before. I will take it. I will take one of these. I mean, you can't prove that I'm not Anthony Smith is basically all this comes down to. We've never been in the same place at the same time. No, Liam, my brother, I hear you. I feel you. I don't necessarily want to sign up to be on the other side of Puna. And I totally respect the gym that he comes out of. That's a big part of this. Is Extreme Couture is a gym that I very much have faith in and believe in. I've just seen this exact fighter give this guy problems. You know what I mean? That's kind of all it comes down to me. We'll see. It's a close fight. It's a tight line. Again, I haven't bet it. I haven't bet it yet, guys. We'll see what ends up happening come fight time, but I'm being very careful on this first card. And not because I had a shitty year last year, but because this first card is full of landmines. And I had one spot that I was looking at pretty hard, and that may have changed a little bit. We'll get to that in just a second. It's co-main event time, everybody. Smash the like button already if you haven't. I'm going to keep saying it because you guys got to do it. It's a thing. It's something we got to work on. All right. Next up, speaking of Dan Ige, we've got Dan Ige taking on Damon Jackson. I'm going to keep calling him the Leech. I don't give a fuck what he wants to call himself. He's the Leech. He will always be the Leech. Dan Ige is a minus 125 favorite in this spot. The slight underdog, Damon Jackson, plus 105. And I got to be careful, Liam, because every time I pick against Damon Jackson, he finds me. He finds me online. And I get shit from a UFC fighter on Twitter because he goes back and he searches his mentions and he finds the people who picked against him and lets them have it. And I was in the laser sights one time after that. I felt pretty bad about it. I thought Cachoeira Kirk was going to give him some problems in the grappling department, and that didn't turn out well for me. I've kind of hit that point where I've stopped questioning this man. He just keeps on getting it done. Late in his career, Damon Jackson is adding wrinkles to his game. We talked about that nasty front kick from Pat Sabatini. He is doing new and different things than we've seen from him before. Early on in his career, I thought maybe he had some chin concerns, and he's given me major Juicy J vibes, Liam. We saw in Juicy J's last fight, he got knocked out cold from a guy that not many people expected him to do the knocking out. And it was after him going on a really solid run, looking like he was putting a career resurgence together. And then those old issues that we kind of thought were there popped back up. That's kind of how I'm feeling about Damon Jackson right now. I'm feeling a little bit of a certain way because he out-grappled Charles Rosa. The wrestling is on point. You know that's how you beat Charles Rosa. Everybody gets it done. He finished Cachoeira Kirk, out-wrestled him, looked great doing it. Can't take a damn thing away from him there. Daniel Argueta, man, he looked gassed out. He looked tired. He did put a lot of effort into finishing that fight early, and that may have contributed to why he got tired late. But, you know, taking on a short notice opponent and then having to hang on for dear life on his back to survive, that doesn't feel good to me. And yeah, he knocked out Pat Sabatini in round one. Highly emotional fight. There was a lot of stuff going on in his personal life leading up to that one. Threw a Hail Mary front kick and got the damn thing done. I think Damon Jackson still is at his core the Damon Jackson that we know. He's the king of the club and sub. He's a strong wrestler. He's a good grappler. Striking is his second language, not his first language. And Dan Ige is a guy who is getting a massive break in competition. Look at the record, Liam. Movsar Evloev, Josh Emmett, Chan Sung Jung, Calvin Cater. I mean, I know he's on a skid, 1-4 in his last 5, but shit, you've got to account for that. Those resumes could not be different. Dan Ige is a good boxer. He's got good wrestling. His takedown defense is suspect. I believe it's sub 500 if I'm looking at my notes here correctly. But his get-up game is on point. 51% takedown defense rating. But his get-up game is on point, and his submission defense is fantastic. He's never been finished. All 6 losses by decision. So in this spot, I kind of lean to Dan Ige. I think he can be more effective with his boxing, using the faster hands, being tighter on the feet. And then if they get into grappling scenarios, I don't think he's going to get caught the same way some of these guys have. And if Damon Jackson's club and sub is the answer, I mean, we've rarely seen Dan Ige rocked. It took a guy like Josh Emmett and those fastballs he throws to rock him to the ground and get him down there. It's another coin flip fight, Liam. It's another one I'm not writing home about. I don't necessarily want to put my money on the guy who's 1-4 in his last 5. I'm going to pick Dan Ige for the win here in this one. What about you?
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the worst experiences I've ever had betting on MMA was the night that I bet Gavin Tucker to beat Dan Ige, and he literally got one punch knocked out in 22 seconds. So Dan Ige packs a punch, ladies and gentlemen.
The most random outcome we've ever seen. Everybody spent their entire weeks talking about how he's got pillow fists and he doesn't ever finish anybody, myself included. And then he starches the guy in a matter of seconds.
Well, I really don't think it's a problem of having pillow fists. It's just a problem of, not having the greatest finishing instincts, not always being able to put together the full 15 minutes or the full 25 minutes. But you got to keep into account here, when we look at a guy like Dan Ige, he's had a lot of 5-round experience now in the UFC. He's actually fought some of the premier guys in the division, some of the best grapplers in the division as well. Korean Zombie doesn't always get the plaudits he deserves. That guy can really grapple, and he's messed a lot of guys up on the ground that thought that they were going to, have something for him, and he submitted them as well. So I feel like he doesn't always get the plaudits he deserves, but that's a real aspect of his game that he had to bring out against Dan Ige, because Dan was starting to find those hands and land big, powerful shots. He throws to the body as well. And one of the things about Dan Ige, he's a cockroach, man. You can't kill the guy. Like, he is very, very hard to put away. I remember seeing him get hit with a body shot from Edson Barboza, and it looked like he saw a ghost. He was like, freeze frame, grabbed a hold of the guy like an over-under clinch, and just fell backwards to stay alive. Like, the guy just will not let himself be put away. So when you talk about a guy fighting for your money at a pick'em price or an underdog price, Dan Ige, pretty hard to look away from. But you also got to look at the wins and the losses, right? And overall, the guy's not been winning that many fights in the UFC, especially lately. But I do think Clint makes a valid point about the level of competition. Is Damon Jackson fighting scrubs? No, of course not. He's fighting guys in the UFC. But is he fighting the same level of UFC guy? No, definitely not. Like, if you saw that fight booked on an LFA card, Damon Jackson, Daniel Argueta, that sounds right. You just hear that. It sounds like it fits on a Dana White's Contender Series FC. Dan Ige has fought in many UFC main events. He's fought against premier top 10 featherweights. It's like, that's a different class of guy. So I don't think that Damon Jackson is undeserving of this step up in competition. He's got some wins. He's got some, important fights that he took for the UFC. They're like, hey, do you want to step on this grenade known as Ilia Topuria? He's like, yeah, sure, I'll take that L. Like, this guy has done a lot of nice things for the company. Now they've given him some back. They've given him some winnable fights. Here's the rubber meeting the road, so to speak. And I think in this fight, Dan Ige is going to parlay his experience into a winning strategy here. I think he's going to try and come out here and gas out, his opponent. I think he's going to try and target the body. I think in all positions, you're going to see Dan Ige try and be violent, and you're going to see Damon Jackson try and control him, get a hold of him. Guys, Charles Rosa almost finished this guy. Make no mistake about that. He had him bleeding all over the place. And Charles Rosa, if he had a little bit more fight IQ, might have thrown more punches and elbows and knees and won the fight. But instead, he was trying to go for submissions, pulling himself into the full closed guard and then getting stuck underneath because he was bleeding everywhere. Damon Jackson's taken a lot of damage in his career. He's been knocked out several times. He's been bloodied up and battered in some fights that he's won. So when I'm thinking about this fight, I think to myself, man, do you want to fight a guy who's known for being a stingy grappler, who's got 25 minutes worth of cardio, and he can really hurt you when he's on the feet. He can land big, heavy shots. Korean Zombie didn't start grappling because he was, having a good time and wanted to mix up the skills. He's getting hurt. He didn't like how it felt. So I feel like in this fight, Damon Jackson's not going to like how it feels. Maybe Damon surprises us again, and he just is a head kick guy now, and he just blasts Dan Ige out of there. I'll believe it when I see it. I think that this is the kind of fight where Damon's going to have to try and hold on to him, slow it down. And Dan Ige is just an ornery prick. He's hard to hold on to. He wants to get in a fight with you, and he's mean. So I feel like he's a really tough guy to deal with. And at this kind of pick 'em price, I feel like the price might be right to back Dan Ige this weekend, but haven't gotten there yet. I'm going to wait and see how these guys size up a little bit. Dan Ige is also a massive featherweight. That was one of the things about Gavin Tucker that I saw on Fight Night, and I was like, wow, I put my money in a bad position because they looked like they were two different weight classes. I want to see how these guys size up because Damon Jackson, he's no small featherweight in his own right. I want to see if my man Dan Ige stacks up with him all right, but if he does, it's probably the Dan Ige side or passing for me. But I do like Damon's game. He's got a good style for winning a lot of fights. He's just a negation-style grappler. Against Dan Ige, that hasn't always been the bread and butter.
That's true. That's true. And Liam, I'm glad you brought that up, man, because it's funny. I don't know why, but my brain tells me Dan Ige is small. Maybe it's the Cater fight, like sticking out in my head, but like for some reason, my brain tells me that Ige is
he's like 5'8", but I think he's got the long reach. Like he's like weirdly built. He's got big shoulders, kind of smaller legs.
It's weird. It's not normal. That's for sure. But it's a good build. It's a solid build. He's got some power in that left hand if he wants to sit down on it. We've seen that. And I'm glad you brought up that comment about Damon Jackson, Liam, like I mentioned at the top of this thing, I foreshadowed just a little bit the durability concerns that I have for him. I think Danny Ige might look for a finish here. You know, he's got that 50K Ige moniker, and coming off of the rough road that he has had, going up against a guy that, like you mentioned, nobody needs to be busted up on the feet by Charles Rosa. Yeah, that's a bad mark, buddy. That is a bad look on your resume. I think if Dan Ige has that opportunity on the feet, which he's a better wrestler than Charles Rosa, he should. I think Dan Ige can put him away. I think we see the chin issues pop back up for Damon Jackson. I think the money line's a fair price tag. I want to see what they offer me for a knockout because Dan Ige is a decision machine. Give me Dan Ige. I like Dan Ige in the co-main event. And everybody, it is not main event time because your boy is rusty. There's a fight on this card that we have missed. We got to run back real quick and talk about my girl, Raquel Pennington. We've got the ladies of the evening here. Ketlen Vieira taking on Raquel Pennington. I love this fight, Liam. This one is an absolute battle. Ketlen Vieira is she a little too old for us to call her a prospect at this point? I'm not sure why, but I keep thinking she's like 27 years old. She's not. She's 31. She's 31 years old. And similarly, Rocky has all the wars with the biggest fighters the UFC has to offer. You'd think she's 39 years old. She's not. She's only 34. Like, Rocky has got plenty of tread left on the tires, and Ketlen is not as young and fresh as we seem to think she is. Very interesting matchup here with Ketlen, the slight favorite coming into this fight. Coming off a split decision win against Holly Holm. Let's get it out of the way, Liam. MMA Decisions is maybe not the best resource on the planet, right? Like, it's just bros like you and me judging fights, sitting back, media members, people who might have agendas, looking at these fights and scoring them. But when you get like a 95% favorite, when it's like everybody with eyes watching this fight scored it one way and the judging goes the other direction, we tend to perk up and notice. Holly Holm won that fight. It was a split decision. They gave it to Ketlen Vieira. I had Holly Holm that night because I always have Holly Holm. And I'm very confident that she should have got the decision in that spot. Ketlen Vieira is a size bully. She's big. She's powerful. She's strong. She's got good judo. Likes to send her opponent for throws. Good BJJ. The wrestling appears to be improving. Decent leg kicks. But Holly Holm showed how you can beat her. Even though the decision didn't go the right way. She showed exactly how you beat her. And I feel like Raquel Pennington is like Holly Holm light. Maybe she's a little smaller. Maybe she's not quite as physically jacked as Holly Holm is. But she's got faster hands. She's got better boxing. She's shown that off recently. And she can absolutely grind. She will pin people up against the fence and she will work the body and then she will change levels and she'll hang on you. She likes the Muay Thai plum. She makes you wear her weight. She hits you with big clinch knees. She does everything she can to just death by 1,000 cuts, man. She chips away at you. And if anything, I think she's more active striking than Holly Holm is, but she's got that same ability to go to the underhooks. She's got that same ability to just physical you and walk you up against the fence and lock you there if she doesn't want you moving off that cage. She did it to people like Aspen Ladd, who, if anything, is physically strong. This is a pick'em price tag. It's a coin flip fight. It seems like Ketlen Vieira's got the finishing upside here in this spot, but Rocky Pennington has that underrated ground game. We saw what happened when she hit the floor with Macy Chiasson. She's got that submission game that you can't ever ignore. She trains at elevation. The gas tank is unquestionable. Death and Taxes and Raquel Pennington by decision for me, Liam. It's a close fight. I don't know if I'm actually going to bet it, but Rocky's got my vote for this one. How about you?
Yeah, we're going to disagree both on the decision for that last fight, and we're going to disagree on the decision for this fight. And
all right,
I did have Ketlen Vieira, so it's possible that I was watching through my green-colored glasses that night. But even on rewatch, you know, I felt like what happened was Holly Holm forced the clinch, and then she got outlanded in the clinch. So it to me was a fight that was very strange in a lot of ways. I thought that Holly Holm probably could have won that fight if she managed it a little bit better tactically. I thought that it was a mistake to continue to force the grappling against somebody who I thought was actually outperforming her in the grappling and in the clinch, which is where she wanted the fight to be. So Holly ended up showing with a lot of control time in that fight, but really she didn't have much effective offense from there. Her hands were both stuck because she was body locking. So then the other girl was just throwing some short elbows, some short punches and knees to the body, and was doing more in the time that was spent there. And then when they were at distance, I thought that Holly did outland her, but I thought she was getting hit with the harder shots. I thought she was looking worse for wear from the shots that Ketlin was throwing. And Ketlin didn't necessarily throw with as much conviction. I think if anything, you know, she doesn't let her hands go as much as her coaches want, you know, as much as you would want backing her. You're like, man, Ketlin, let's get a little bit more volume, a little bit more activity. But she was very tentative in that fight, and she doesn't want to overextend herself. I think she's worried about gassing out because of her size as well. But I just think skill for skill, Ketlen Vieira is better than a lot of women at bantamweight, period. And I've thought so for a long time. I bet her against Holly Holm. I bet her against Miesha Tate. I felt like she was a new, improved version of what they brought to the table. And basically, I feel like Kat Zingano is kind of a good archetype to look at for what Ketlen Vieira can do. You know, when you look at her at space, maybe she's not the most sophisticated striker, but she's got some power. Women are intimidated by her because she's got big size and big strength. And when she gets in the clinch, she's hard to deal with. Holly Holm had to keep a very tight grip on her because if she didn't, she was getting sent over ass over tea kettle. You know, she's getting thrown in the clinch. She's got good judo, good hips, good balance. And on the ground, she's dominated good players in the UFC before. So it's not like she doesn't have a good ground game. When she's able to get on top, she's dominant from there most often. She almost submitted Holly Holm. People forget because it was a brief exchange, but she had Holly Holm turning purple and her neck in a very weird contortion. Holly Holm's tough as nails. That's why she stuck it out there. And she was able to turn back, get good position. But even in that split second, a lot of people panic and tap. Think of the Jessica Andrade finish where she had Amanda Lemos in a head and arm choke standing. There's like 6 more layers of defense you could at least try to get out of there. And she was panicking, so she got out.
She was turning purple. I'll give you that one.
But when somebody's neck is at that weird contortion as well, people could just tap because they're concerned about injury. And yeah, that was the thing for me was Ketlen, she's too nice. She was too nice to Miesha Tate. She could have finished that fight. She was a little too nice to Holly Holm. She wants to be friends with everybody. She admires these women, respects them, looks up to them. This is the kind of fight where it's more so a contemporary of hers, somebody a little bit younger, not a former champion, a former title challenger, and somebody that she should be on par with in terms of this division. I feel like in terms of where they're going, in terms of direction, I think Ketlen's on the way up. I do think that Raquel Pennington has made some improvement since her title fight, but you can't undo the damage done. The visual of her saying, I don't want to be here anymore, and her coach is sending her back out there to get beat up more. I'm not going to forget that soon. Not a good look. And it's hard to bounce back from things like that. She's had moments where she was hurt and almost finished against Macy Chiasson and these kind of people where I can't necessarily put the same trust in her at this stage of the game. And so for those reasons, I think Ketlen Vieira, despite the fact she got knocked out by Irene Aldana, one of the more dangerous strikers in the division, I think she's just a little bit better in all positions. I think she's going to find her way on top and potentially find a finish in this fight. As well. But I think it's going to be a good fight while it lasts. I think that it would have to come later in the fight. She'd have to get to some advantageous positions, but she's got a lot of size and she's not afraid to lean on people in the clinch. Holly Holm's a little bit taller. She was able to leverage her a little bit. I feel like we've seen other women do the same thing to Raquel Pennington at various points. She's a good clinch fighter, but I think this is the kind of fight where fighting in the clinch could get you thrown, could get you stuck on bottom and get you in a tight position with somebody who could really grapple. So I think Ketlen Vieira is a dangerous fighter, a little bit underappreciated in the division. And I think this could be what earns her a title shot.
All right. All right. It's going to come down to that clinch, Liam. It's all going to come down to who wins the clinch battle. And so far, Rocky hasn't let me down. Now, just so people don't yell at me for being biased on my own picks and all that kind of stuff, we do need to acknowledge the level of competition. You talked about Raquel Pennington taking the beating and getting sent back out there versus Amanda Nunes. Man, that was 5 years ago. Like I believe the recent performances from Raquel Pennington have kind of laid that to rest. Now, in recent fights, you've got Ketlen who's taken on Yana Kunitskaya, Miesha Tate, and Holly Holm. More legends, more champions. And then Raquel Pennington has faced Aspen Ladd, who's a dropout, Macy Chiasson, who barely kept her job, even though she's looked decent recently, and Piani Kinzad, who, even though she looks like she's a sharp up-and-comer, is 16-6 overall. It's a different level of competition. So one thing I will give you is that it's absolutely fair to say that this is a pick 'em price tag. Ketlen Vieira's had the harder fought recent fights. And because of that, you can definitely give her a little bit of an edge there in that line, kind of like we talked about on some of those recent fights. So, hey, it's a pick 'em price tag, man. I am picking my girl Rocky. I'm going to watch this thing live. I'm going to be rooting my ass off. I don't have a bet. Good luck if you bet on Ketlin Vieira. I think this is a very close fight, and we're going to find out probably pretty quick in those clinch positions who's got the advantage. But pre-flop, couldn't tell you. I'm going to cheer for Rocky. I'm not betting this one. My money's not going anywhere near this fight. All right, everybody. The time has come. We are finally here. It is actually main event time. And we have the privilege of breaking down Imavov versus Kelvin Gastelum. Oh, wait, we've got a short notice replacement. It is not Kelvin Gastelum. It will be none other than the UFC's relative psychopath, Sean Strickland, filling in here on short notice. My guy Liam hit me in the DMs pre-show and let me know that this swap had taken place. I was not prepared. I was not ready. Apparently the UFC was. We all know at this point, Kelvin Gastelum just simply doesn't fight. He's the pullout king. So they were ready with a backup. Sean Strickland steps in, and we got a whole new fight to talk about, folks. But it does look like it was a relatively decent reason that Kelvin Gastelum pulled out of this fight. Holy shit, dude's face got busted up. Can't go into a fight looking like that. But frankly, Liam, I was ready to hammer Nasruddin Imavov. I know a lot of people that are looking at Kelvin Gastelum as an underdog. Twitter's just flooded with people right now that are going, I was going to bet KG. And I'm like, I was ready to lay the wood, man. I think Imavov's time is here. I think the size, I think the wrestling ability, the one way we've seen Kelvin Gastelum finished has been by sub. Run it back, baby. I was going to have a sneaky tinfoil degenerate hat bet on that submission prop. But now we got to look at a whole different matchup. And frankly, I think it's a much tougher matchup. You've got Imavov going from being much bigger, much larger, to fighting a 205-pound Sean Strickland, who is actually going to have a 1-inch reach advantage on... I'm sorry, Nasruddin's reach advantage is going to get cut down from 4 inches to 1 inch, which is significant. He's also going to go from being 5 inches taller to being 1 or 2 inches taller. Like, this is physical frame wise, this is much different. And Sean Strickland has 85% takedown defense. He's still got crazy high output. He's got the best jab in the game as far as I'm concerned. And his ground game is sneaky good. He doesn't use it, but we know Imavov likes to take people down. So there's a chance that ground game gets involved. Obviously, I haven't done the tape study on Sean Strickland with Imavov in mind. So you guys are getting a very surface level read and breakdown here on this spot. But Imavov, I was ready to lay minus 200. I was ready to lay minus 225. I think this line is far closer to pick 'em than the Kelvin Gastelum spot would be. And Sean Strickland poses a lot of problems for a young up-and-coming fighter who has beaten guys like Joaquin Buckley. I mean, Edmund Shabazian, who gasses out, is nothing to write home about. But let's not forget that it wasn't long ago that he got ground out by Phil frickin' Hawes. If Sean Strickland steps into this guy, puts that jab on him, for a 25-minute fight, we know Strickland can put up 200 significant strikes in a 25-minute fight. Can Nasruddin Imavov get takedowns on this man? And if he can he do it consistently over 25 minutes without gassing down? Can he eat jabs from Sean Strickland for 25 minutes without slowing down and without leaving openings? I'm not convinced. This is a much stiffer test, and I want nothing to do with Nasruddin Imavov against a 205-pound Sean Strickland. This is definitely going to be a wait and see, and we don't even have lines to talk about at this point. Liam, what are your thoughts on the shakeup, and what would you look for in this fight moving forward?
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting one. I see my man VB MMA
VB
comments, and
I just met him, Liam.
That Gastelum was going to win here potentially, and I actually agree with him. I thought that Gastelum was a very live underdog, and I've been saying for a while, if you guys have listened to my stuff, I think that Nasruddin Imavov, Dricus du Plessis, and Andre Muniz were my three guys at middleweight that I kind of saw as up-and-comers that had a lot of real skills, that had a lot of the right foundation to work with, and I wanted to see how those guys developed into the division. And depending on how they got matched up, I was going to look to continue to back them because I bet Imavov in the past. I actually bet him in that Phil Hawes fight. I was very disappointed with how that one turned out. But I think I got my get-backs on the Edmund Shabazian fight. So, I've had some mixed success here. But most of the time I had a pretty decent read on his fights. The one thing I've noticed looking back at the data historically, you've been profiting if you've been betting on Nasruddin Imavov, right? He's come out here as an underdog in more of his UFC bouts than not, and he's done quite well. Other things I noticed in the data, the guy's been going over 60% of the time. 3 out of 5 fights have gone over so far in the UFC, and the fights are going to decision a little bit more than expected as well. So a couple of trends there that I noticed where, he's known as like the Russian sniper, the finisher, and then a lot of the fights have been going to decision, especially when he takes this step up in competition. I think it's important to note that guys like Buckley, they're known for getting knocked out. It's like that's actually what they're known for. It's like that's the fatal flaw of Buckley is he gets knocked out in his losses. He's been knocked out, I think, 3 or 4 times, multiple times in the UFC. So then when you see Nasruddin Imavov landing clean, unobstructed rear hand uppercuts, and he's not knocking him out, I'm a little bit concerned. When you have Phil Hawes doing the chicken dance 3 or 4 times and you can't get him out of there, I'm a little bit concerned. So
Chris Curtis got it done against both of them.
Yeah. And I'm seeing improvements over time, right? Imavov, like I said, stood out to me as a good fighter that first time with Phil Hawes. I knew people are going to undervalue him because he lost here, but Phil Hawes is pretty unique in his ability to grab a hold of you, push you into the fence, and just lay on you. I don't think we're going to see that from Strickland, but Strickland kind of does that in some of his fights. You go back and watch, like in the Jared Cannonier fight, Jared is extremely strong, so he couldn't hold it for very long. But he had a couple exchanges where he got a hold of the wrist with one hand behind his back, and he started throwing with the other hand, the free hand along the cage. He's done that in a number of fights. He did that to Uriah Hall. He likes to bully people and get a hold of them. Can he do that to Imavov, who's a big guy, who's very strong, who's physical in the early going? Probably not. But can he do that to him as the fight gets extended? Probably. Sean Strickland is a good 5-round fighter. He can go for the full 25. He can start to turn up the pressure on somebody as the fight goes. But when you're fighting somebody like Jared Cannonier, who just came off of a 5-round title fight, who has been fighting main events now for a while, he fought Kelvin Gastelum, who was supposed to be here in a 5-round main event that was very tit for tat and striking oriented, but there was also wrestling exchanges and guys trying to get takedowns and get on top. And he was able to fight through that for 25 full minutes. He added volume like he said he would, by the way. Credit to Jared Cannonier. How many guys at 38 say, I'm going to make an improvement, and they're right? He did. He said, I'm going to add more volume. He went out there. He threw more volume against Strickland. That's how he got the W.
We need his blood for testing, Liam. We need his DNA for future generations. Something that guy was part of the
You saw us probably calling him every couple of weeks. Hey, Jared, you still around? We're going to be coming to visit again. But the guy's done remarkable things, and I thought that was just an impressive win. I expected Sean Strickland to go out there and get that W. So what concerns me for Sean Strickland here, he just fought. He fought like 2 weeks ago. He fought 3 weeks ago. Now he's expected to make this quick turnaround where he just fought 25 minutes against a guy named the Killer Gorilla who hit him with punches, kicks, everything to the head, neck, chest, everywhere else. So what has been his problem historically? How have you been able to beat Sean Strickland? Well, sometimes he fights too close. He goes to split decision. That kind of leaves a little bit of volatility. Conversely, he doesn't always find the finish. He'll put a lot of guys in a deficit in striking numbers, but Jack Hermanson goes to a split decision with him because he doesn't look for the finish. He doesn't get to those finishing positions. Sometimes he just fights too arrogant. He thought he won that fight against Jared Cannonier. He thought he didn't need to push the pace and the pressure. He feels like every time he thinks he hurts you, he gets all the credit in the world. It's like, that's not how this works. You got to make your point and make it clearly, and you only got 25 minutes to do it. So backing Sean Strickland at chalk, it's becoming harder and harder for me because he's not fighting these clear margins. He's not locked to go out there and fight through for the full 25 minutes. He's been finished on a number of occasions now in the UFC, both at 170 and 185. So there's some question marks. There's some concerns on the Strickland side. But who is more likely to fight this fight well for 25 minutes? I would have a hard time saying anybody other than Sean Strickland because he's done it, and he's done it recently. He just went with a former title challenger, 25 minutes, hard pace, and looked good. He didn't look great. He didn't look exceptional. He looked good. It was a little too defensive. It was a little bit like a guy who just got knocked out by the biggest hitting 185er who's the current champion. It's like, I'll give him a pass for those 2 fights. If he loses here, he was never an elite guy at middleweight, and we have to reckon with that and just move on, and he's all right. You know, he's a guy that can stick around and be a middleweight journeyman, just like he was kind of turning into a welterweight journeyman, not a welterweight contender. The UFC's kept this guy around for a long time. They've given him a lot of opportunities. I think they like Sean Strickland. I think they like having him around. I think he says yes to every opportunity and is willing to go out there and get flatlined in Madison Square Garden to try and get his opportunity. But I also think you do that one too many times and you might start being the doormat of the division. So this is an important fight for Sean Strickland. I don't think he would have taken it very lightly. And I think he's going to come in here with a point to prove against a guy who was starting to slow down really badly against Joaquin Buckley, who he had a massive size and reach advantage over. Just something to consider.
15-minute fight. We got 25 minutes to work here. The thing that I never question about Sean Strickland is that ability to work over a 25-minute fight. That cardio is always on point. You mentioned the damage he may have taken against Jared Cannonier. Man, was he really that busted up though, Liam? I feel like he had like a bloody mouth.
The thing was, I thought Jared got off on some really hard low kicks, and I feel like those will stick with you for 3 weeks, 4 weeks after a fight. I also think that, you know, Sean got hit with a couple of clean shots, probably rung his bell, probably had a concussion, I would think. But if not, God bless him for it. The guy's got a brick for a head because he did get hit very cleanly a few times. Like, the problem that I have with Sean's game is that he keeps his head very much on the center line, and he's willing to take a shot sometimes. He's willing to just paw it off a little bit and have it glance off the top of his forehead. But eventually, you do stuff like that, and you don't see one coming, and it hits you really clean, and you get knocked out. And it's happened to him before, again, with the spinning head kick and with a conventional left hook. Jared Cannonier almost knocked his block off at one point with a step-in right hook that he never saw coming. So I feel like he did the same thing to Kelvin Gastelum, by the way. It's like that's what Jared Cannonier does really well. Switches stances, gets you off guard, and then he hits you with something big. So I thought Sean conducted himself well there. I thought that Jared Cannonier offers a lot more resistance to wrestling and grappling than somebody like Imavov. And I think when you compare the athleticism, maybe a B-plus athlete is what I call Imavov. He's got skills. He's got balance. Maybe a B. But then you look at some of these other guys in the division that he's been having to face, and they're A-plus, very difficult guy. Jared Cannonier's an A-plus athlete. What the hell are you going to do to that guy? He looks like he's crafted in a video game. So I think that this is a kind of fight that's a lot more reasonable for Sean Strickland. I just don't like the time frame. That's what's going to give me a little pause here. And I want to hear where his head's at. Chael Sonnen, for all intents and purposes, made a really interesting point where Sean Strickland wasn't talking the same way before his fight with Jared Cannonier, and he wasn't mouthing off, and he wasn't showing that bravado and that confidence. That's a problem. I want to hear that from Sean Strickland if I'm going to support him financially this weekend, because I did think the only criticism I would give in that performance is I just thought it was way too conservative. And I thought it was a little bit arrogant that he thought he was winning every round. It was all close. It was all within the margins. He didn't do anything to set himself apart. The guy has been grappling for years. Guys, he's been grappling before he came to the UFC. He was talented. He should be grappling in these fights and mixing it up, and he should be attempting takedowns more often to get guys tired and to get them thinking about other things. If he doesn't do that, he's just going to turn into a very rote fighter who's easy to game plan for. He jabs. He throws teeps to the body. That's it. It's like, if that's what you want to be, a jab merchant, you got a very low ceiling compared to some of these guys where if he mixes in all his skills, he can be really dangerous. It is foolish for him to not grapple more in these fights. And when you have a skill set, you have to push it. Push to an opponent's disadvantage. And I think in this fight, that is where a clear disadvantage may lie. Nasruddin Imavov is training at the MMA Factory. A lot of talented guys come out of there. But I noted it before Francis fought Cyril Gane. Who's been training in the U.S.? Who's been getting reps at Extreme Couture where they all know how to wrestle and grapple and they're all really serious and they've got an American background? That's different than training over there in France where Nasruddin Imavov might be the best guy in that wrestling room. He's training with Cyril Gane, right? It's like him and Cyril are probably the top two guys in that wrestling room. And Cyril got audited by a guy who's been in the United States for like 3 years and just learned how to grapple at Extreme Couture. It's like, do you see what I'm saying? In this fight and in this opportunity, Sean Strickland would be foolish as Nasruddin slows down, if he does, to not start wrestling and grappling. And how do you get Nasruddin to slow down? Wrestle and grapple, right? It's a two-edged sword. You can get somebody like this tired, but you got to force them into a fight they're uncomfortable with. If Nasruddin's just standing at range, he's going to feel comfortable, and he's probably going to get the better of the exchanges because he lands with more power. But I think that if Sean makes it a dirty, disgusting fight where he does nothing but walk forward, grab a hold of the guy, and push him into the fence, he might make this look easy. So I think my early lean is towards Sean Strickland, but I have been burnt backing Sean Strickland before, and I'm going to be very careful here before I part with my dollars. You guys are getting my initial reaction, right? Like I told Clint, but I told him at 5:30. You know, it's not like I had a ton of foreknowledge either. So I'm going to do my due diligence. I had probably 20 pages of notes on Kelvin Gastelum put together. I was starting to feel real good about, and then of course he's off the card. So next time Kelvin Gastelum's fighting, guys, come ask me some questions. I'm going to have a lot for you. But in the interim, I'm going to do my Sean Strickland research and get back on the horse.
We're going to have to log all that information for much later. Thank you for putting the effort in, Liam. We definitely still appreciate it, even though we're not going to get to hear much of it this particular time. Yeah, man, I'm with you. I lean ever so slightly to Sean Strickland here. Like I mentioned, I feel like this is a much, much tougher matchup for Nasruddin Imavov. I know a lot of people are saying, don't worry about the gas tank. I do worry about the gas tank. Very, very interesting shuffle we're going to have going into the weekend. Guys, that's all I got for you. Good luck on all your action this week. I don't have a bet on the card yet. Like I said, I missed that under 2.5 in the Flick versus Johnson. Now I'm hesitating because it's -175. There's a couple chalky favorites that I think get it done. There's a couple of these big, gigantic underdogs that I may sprinkle because I feel like these lines are disrespectful wide. Hani Barcelos is not one of them. I hope you guys use the information given to you here on the show. Go out, make some educated bets. I'll be tweeting out my action as always on Twitter. I do need to shout out my guy Mushroom real quick because unless I'm mistaken, he will be joining our guy Lou Betcha for the props show later on this week. I love me some MMA engine, so you guys get together and do some damage. I'm going to go watch some hockey and college football, guys. Liam, the floor is yours, my friend. Let the people know where they can support you and what you've got going on over the next couple of days.
Absolutely. Truly appreciate it, my man. It's always a blast. The time flies when we're talking about these fights.
Every time.
It feels like we're back to normal, right? We're actually getting after it. We have some fights to talk about, some fights to break down. So truly just excited to be back, guys. Everybody, you can find me everywhere at Liam Picks Fights. If you're looking for more of the work that I've been doing, if you're looking for access to all my notes, things like that, at the Lab VIP. I'm working with 3 other cappers, all profitable handicappers. They cover sports like NFL, NBA, the mainstream sports, stick and ball that I don't really do. I'm starting to develop my own personal track record for accountability purposes and to get better at marketing other skills. But in terms of what I'm doing personally, I'm a very profitable MMA handicapper. I started out like everybody else, just a guy that liked doing this. But I spent a lot of time, a lot of invested research. I have some of the most detailed notes in the industry. I'm very confident in saying that. And it's about fight tape as well as betting trends. I understand the market as well as what needs to happen from an MMA handicapping standpoint. So I just appreciated the opportunity to come on and share that with your audience, Clint. It was an absolute pleasure, my brother, and I hope that we do it again sometime later this year. Maybe one of these big pay-per-view events, we'll hop on and drop some knowledge for the people with even more preparation for that main event. So, man, absolute blast, and I hope we do it again soon.
Liam, we always appreciate your time, my guy. And you know this, guys, I say it time and time again. I am not the best handicapper around. I'm a degenerate who likes to play the game. I bring people like Liam on so you actually have someone who knows what the hell they're talking about, sharing information with you, like reading the market. I don't know what the fuck that means. So everybody make sure you follow these guys that I bring on the show. I hope it was entertaining and fun for you. And yes, Liam, the move is a pay-per-view card later on in this year. I just wanted to, we had to start strong, my guy. We had to start strong. So we'll bring it back around for a pay-per-view. Everybody get your asses out there. Let's kick some ass in 2023 betting. As always, thank you, Pub Sports Radio. Thank you, Superbook Sports. And guys, just a word to the wise. It's New Year's. It's our first show since the New Year's. Don't go out there, new year, new me. That's bullshit. Nobody does new year, new me. Make small changes. Go out there and do one thing better. Do one thing better. Once you get good at doing that one thing better, add the next thing better that you want to work on. We can take one tiny steps to making ourselves better human beings, better people, better gamblers, one step at a time. And that's how we're going to do it. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Just take that first step. That's all it takes. I'm going to go do some sit-ups. Love you guys. Kick some ass. Good luck on all your degenerate action. And as always, let's roll.